in a trap because in Jesus' time, the Roman Empire was in charge, and just a little bit of a history refresher: the people of Israel, they weren't happy about that. They didn't like the fact that they were living under Roman rule, and they had been living under foreign oppression for something like 700 years at that time.
Wow.
I mean, 700 years. I mean, think about that. It's about 3 times the length of our country's history.
Certainly.
And so first it was the Assyrians, then the Babylonians, then the Persians, then the Greeks, and then finally the Romans. So they had strong opinions about taxes. They had strong opinions about these foreign rulers. So so to pay taxes in that time, you were supporting literally these foreign oppressors.
Mm-hmm.
You were paying for them. And
Kamala Harris being president. No, I'm sorry.
And so there were already strong opinions about taxes, just the Jew, which Jesus was.
Right.
And he was originally talking mainly to Jewish audiences. So when these Jewish religious leaders, they're trying to test or even to trap Jesus, they ask Jesus, is it lawful or should we pay taxes? They know there's really no good answer, because if he says no, that's what every Jew would want him to say. Well, then he's going to get in trouble with the Roman authorities. And then, maybe even the Roman authorities might try to capture this Jesus because, he's being treasonous, saying you shouldn't pay taxes. But if he says, yes, you should pay taxes, then Jesus is going to lose credibility with all the Jews, all the local people there. So it's kind of a no-win answer there for Jesus. And Jesus brilliantly sidesteps that he says that famous quote, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's." And
I'm staying out of this.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of, to some degree, it's a non-committal answer. Now, I think some people then will take a statement like that and they'll say that, well, Jesus just doesn't care about politics. Jesus is only interested in the individual then. Jesus didn't come and wasn't interested in these, empires and all that kind of stuff. So as Christians today, we just shouldn't really stick our nose in politics. And well, I think there's an element of truth to that. I do think that to follow Jesus does have a political meaning, because to place our trust in Jesus is to say that Jesus is Lord. And certainly in Jesus' day, that was a political kingdom of God. He talked about this peace that came, which is also a contested phrase.
Let's go to the phone.
We're looking to eliminate interchange costs for processing credit cards.
Shut up. God, credit card calls.
Yeah.
God,
oh, man. Here we were getting excited.
You were rolling, too.
I know.
Rolling. I thought you were going to get this deep question.
Yeah.
Telemarketer on a robocall.
Well, so there was political language in the way that Jesus would talk, and there are political consequences. But let me be clear: I don't think Jesus would be here today saying one must be a Republican, one must be a Democrat. I don't even think Jesus would necessarily say that one nation is, maybe more better off than another nation. I don't think Jesus quite cares as much about, the political entities, but I do think the way we live out our faith, if we follow Jesus, will have political implications, and it will impact the choices we make about who we're putting in office, about policies that we are enacting, and even about taxes and the way that we use our resources. Now, I think we can go a couple different directions with that. I just wanted to take a second and pause, give you a chance if you had any follow-up questions or thoughts about that before I continue moving on with my thoughts here.
No, you're moving here, boy. I'll tell you.
Okay, well, so I do think then, if you look at other parts of Scripture, we are called to live in particular ways that will impact the way that we vote and the policies that we make. So, for example, probably one of the most famous passages as it relates to ethics and kind of social discussions would be Matthew 25. In Matthew 25, there's this famous parable where it talks about at the end times, God is going to separate the sheep and the goats.
How about the rest of us?
Yeah. Well, and so here's the moral of the story. You don't want to be one of the goats. You want to be a sheep.
Okay.
So we'll start there. And essentially, God, this judge separating the sheep and the goats, says, to the sheep, come with me to paradise, because when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. And he goes down on this whole big long list. And then the sheep, they say in response, they say, well, Lord, when did we see you hungry and give you something to eat, or thirsty and something to drink, and et cetera, et cetera? To which God answers, whatever you did even to the least of these, you did so to me. And in the same way, then the judge turns to the goats and says, depart from me. And it's kind of the flip side of that. For you didn't feed me when I was hungry. You didn't visit me when I was in prison, or clothe me when I was naked. And then the goats have a similar response. Well, Lord, when did we see you hungry, thirsty, in prison, naked, poor, etc.?
Mm-hmm.
And, whatever you didn't do for the least of these, you didn't do unto me. And then they're sent off to hell, essentially. Now, that's a striking passage for a couple of reasons. One, the sole determining factor, according to Jesus in Matthew 25, about who goes to heaven or who goes to hell, has nothing to do with faith. It has nothing to do with grace. It has nothing to do with what we do or don't believe, but it has everything to do with the way that we treat those who are downtrodden. It has everything to do with acts of social righteousness, of social justice. Now, that's troubling in and of itself, because we're taught that, well, it's just about what you believe, right? We're saved by grace through faith. If you had Dave Grinberg on here, the Lutheran, he'd be quoting Martin Luther there.
Oh, no, not him.
And yet here Jesus is kind of challenging that, saying what you do actually matters supremely for where you will end up, in heaven or hell.
Mm-hmm.
And even more than that, then, this is striking, because it says that whatever we do, even to the least of these, now we can kind of fill in the blank who the least of these are, but whatever you do, even to the least of these, it's as if you were doing it to God himself. And that really will impact our understanding about how we use our finances. What are we doing to alleviate the concerns in our own community? Because there are definitely the least of these in every one of our communities.
Mm-hmm.
Neighbors that we maybe don't want anything to do with. People maybe in the homeless population, people struggling with mental health, that we would kind of identify as the least of these. And whatever we do or don't do them, Jesus says, it's the same as if we were or were not doing it to God himself.
Do we treat the least of us well here in this country?
Man, you could go so many different ways with that. Mm-hmm. I think if you look at the history of the world, if you look at how our country compares with many other countries, I think we're doing far better than we have. If you look at just in the last generation or so, if you look at how many people from the United States have stepped up to end curable disease, there are, now I'm not going to get these off the top of my head. I'm going to have to check this between the break, but there are a variety of diseases that literally within the last generation, we have cut the instances of them in half worldwide. And these are diseases that impact people in the millions all over the world. And so in that instance, Christians and leaders in the United States have had a tremendous impact in the last 50 years of reaching out, globally speaking, to the least of these. So tremendous, incredible progress has been made in, say, the last 100 years, especially. And I would say, even throughout the centuries, the church has had a wonderful history of reaching out to people in a variety of social programs and providing for people in need. Now, that's not to say that there's more that we could be doing. I think every one of us, if we stop and really reflect, we could be doing more in our own local community and even abroad. You hear all those appeals for programs like Compassion International or World Vision, where for $35 to $40 a month, you can feed an orphan child and you can essentially save their life. And I think those are incredible opportunities that really do have a tangible impact. And that's something that, for $1 a day, I mean, you really can be saving people's lives. So I think there are opportunities that we all could be stepping up to do more of those things with. Even more than that, I know that there's incredible need here just in Webster County with foster care and adoption and children who have some rough family circumstances. I know of families in town who do foster parenting and provide a tremendous ministry for for children right here in Webster County, and that need is ongoing. So there's always more.
There are those in your church, and this is AM 1400 KVFT, the voice of Fort Dodge. We're talking with Pastor Austin Hill. There are those in your church who believe that the correct thing to do is maybe just give enough help to get someone back on their feet.
Sure.
That the real responsibility and our real duty as Christians is to help them find the strength within themselves to be self-supporting.
Certainly.
And sometimes that looks like self-serving cruelty to some, but I would agree that if you're in some sort of circumstance where you keep finding yourself helpless, you need to change your attitude somehow.
Yeah. Well, and so you can look at that a couple different ways. When I think of children, for instance, I think children don't have the capacity to pull themselves up by their bootstraps.
They don't.
And so I think we can start kind of with the low-hanging fruit. I don't think anyone would deny that children should have resources and have opportunities for education and to be set up so that in the future, when they do grow up, they can support themselves, and you can change some of those generational cycles that way. So that's, I think, a great place to start is reaching out to the children in our community. And whether their parents are making intelligent choices or not, those children don't have a choice in that. So, when you hear the statistics about how many children in our school district are on the free and reduced lunch program and literally don't have much of anything to eat on the weekends, those are opportunities that even if their parents are making bad choices every day, unless we want those kids to make those same bad choices when they grow up, we've got to find some way to intervene in the lives of those children.
Boy, we've been talking about that a long time. We've been talking about a way to break that family cycle for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I don't think we found it yet.
Well, I think there are some small steps of progress. And, Charles Clayton has done tremendous work over at APHIS. Caleb Carlson over at Ickes has been doing great work as well. And I think the more churches can partner together, other service clubs and organizations in town, that's where I see a lot of hope. I see a lot of people who are excited to help and monetary support and give of their time in those organizations. So I think it's a long process. If it takes 18 years for a child to grow up, and even then, there's no guarantee that an 18-year-old's grown up in any way, shape, or form.
Or a man my age, for that matter.
Well, yeah, we're all growing up. I'll let you say those words by yourself.
That's all right. That's okay.
So I think you're right in that it can take an entire generation to see some of those changes, and we don't always have, of course, we don't have 100% success in that stuff at all. But I think that's a good place where we can start is with children, because they don't have a say in the matter.
No, they don't. I don't know if you and I have talked about the concept of a just war or not. I know I talked with Pastor Grinberg about it when he was still here in town. He scoffed at the idea. Father Boehm, on the other hand, has told us that there is a concept of just war in the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
We'll come back and get the Presbyterian version of that question here in just a few minutes at AM 1400 KVFD.
Michael Devine at AM 1400 KVFD.
I don't understand what is preventing you from laughing this off and giving me a big hug.
Michael Devine, the Doctor of Truth.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to confess?
At AM 1400 KVFD.
All right, AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. News is next. We'll be back with Pastor Hill.
Carrie here. For years, you've heard my husband, Ken.
Hello, Radioland.
Explain how Income Store is the place for your next revenue stream. Not to date ourselves, but Ken and I have been helping individuals and businesses grow their revenue since before the internet was even a thing. We've heard countless stories as to why people look to increase their revenue.
Some stories make us laugh, some make us cry.
These stories, combined with our own, have motivated Ken and I to dedicate our lives to help people, as Ken says, who need a revenue shot in the backside.
Whether you want to just learn how or simply put, you need to generate revenue today. Our mission is to serve both.
Our worldwide staff of over 150 help to create amazing resources, our most famous being the iTunes podcast.
Today's growth. You got to check out episode 383. It's truly amazing.
And both Inc. and Forbes have shared that when it comes to generating revenue, Income Store is a can't miss. To grow your revenue today, check out IncomeStore.com.
That's IncomeStore.com.
Hi, I'm Tommy. I'm a farmer, a wife, a mom, a leader in my community, and I live with HIV. My life is just like yours. I get up every day hoping for the best day possible out in field. I feed my soul with hard work and am dedicated to making the most out of every day. I wasn't always so optimistic, but once I found out that I'm just one of over 3,000 Iowans living with HIV, I knew I wasn't alone. I reached out to the Iowa Department of Public Health and found out I qualified for medication and medical care, financial help, transportation, housing, and counseling through Ryan White funding. That was a huge relief to me and my family. I've taken control of my diagnosis and take care of myself so I can live my best life. I'm living with HIV, not dying from it. Why wait? Reach out for testing and care services at StopHIVIowa.org.
Your news, your town, your station. KVFD News when it breaks.
Good afternoon. I'm Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. A child was killed when a vehicle carrying 8 people from Nebraska crashed along an icy interstate in southwestern Iowa, Cass County last night. Radio Iowa's Rick Hansen reports.
All of the victims were from Grand Island, Nebraska. The Iowa State Patrol reports a 2004 GMC driven by 40-year-old Jesus Cantero Perez was traveling westbound on I-80 at around 10:30 p.m. near the Marnie exit, and the vehicle went out of control due to freezing rain and icy conditions. The vehicle entered the ditch and rolled onto its passenger side. The passenger in the vehicle, 9-year-old Joshua Tavares, who was not wearing a seatbelt, died at the scene. Cantor Perez and his passengers, 35-year-old Wendy Tavares, 11-year-old Ashley Tavares, 12-year-old Kimberly Tavares, 11-year-old Yamilet Cantero, 15-year-old Jonathan Tavares, and 10-year-old Emmanuel Cantero were all injured in the crash. 4 of the injured children were not wearing their seatbelts. Both adults were buckled up. I'm Rick Hansen reporting for Radio Iowa News.
California Senator Kamala Harris is announcing the backing of Iowa Democrat Deidre DeGiere. She travels to the early 2020 caucus state Monday. DeGiere was Iowa's first African-American to win a primary for statewide office last year, but lost in her attempt to unseat Iowa's Republican Secretary of State. DeGiere has since been courted by several Democrats taking steps toward running for president. Harris campaigned with DeGiere in Iowa last fall after the two met in Washington, D.C. and California. Harris is scheduled to travel to Des Moines to participate in a CNN town hall-style event live Monday evening. Harris announced her candidacy for president January 21st. She also announced that Will Dubs, a former aide to Hillary Clinton in 2016, will direct the California senator's 2020 Iowa campaign. The body of a missing Marshalltown teenager has been found. Radio Iowa's Ken Hughey reports.
After 5 days of searching, Marshalltown police say the body of 13-year-old Corey Brown was found Sunday morning in a secluded area on the west side of Marshalltown. Brown left his south side home on Tuesday evening, the 22nd, after what was reported as a typical parent-teen dispute. The Brown family discovered Corey's disappearance Wednesday morning and found security camera video from their house of Corey leaving and heading south. That appears to be the last time he was seen alive. The Brown family has requested that their privacy be honored while thanking all the public safety personnel and volunteers who, quote, worked diligently, unquote, in the search for Corey. Marshalltown Police Chief Mike Tupper said the investigation is continuing into the 13-year-old's disappearance and death, but adds that while there is no indication of any criminal activity, all scenarios are being investigated. For Radio Iowa, Ken Hughey, Marshalltown.
This has been Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. Have a great day.
This is AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. It's 2:32. The real news, of course, is the weather. And there is a winter weather advisory going on right now. Prolonged, dangerous, cold, wind chill factors, temperatures this week, strong winds with blowing snow today. Light snow will be diminishing to flurries with periods of blowing snow today for most locations in our area. Winds this afternoon will cause blowing and drifting snow over areas where overnight snow occurred. Visibility reduced to under a quarter mile at times today in rural areas. Wind gusts to 40 miles per hour will remain with us this afternoon into the early evening. There will be an extended and really rarely seen, according to the National Weather Service, outbreak of extreme cold and dangerous wind chill temperatures from late tonight through Thursday morning. That's late tonight through Thursday morning. The wind chill factor temperature could be 40 to 50 degrees below zero, which is very, very dangerous. So please use extreme caution again until Thursday, for crying out loud. Frankly, I've pretty cold winters. Again, a chance of patchy blowing snow this afternoon. Overnight, partly cloudy. Our real temperature will be 5 degrees below zero. Wind chill factor temperatures easily 20 below, 30 below, maybe 40 below. Extreme, extreme cold overnight into tomorrow. Sunny and cold on Tuesday. Then our temperature will fall to 8 degrees below zero during the day, with a wind chill factor temperature of 30 to 40 degrees below zero. That's for tomorrow. On Wednesday, it'll be sunny and extremely cold. Our high temperature, this is the high temperature, 13 degrees below zero on Wednesday. Wind gusting up to 30 miles per hour. Again, dangerous wind chill factor temperatures Wednesday into Thursday. On Thursday, it warms up. It'll be cloudy and cold, high 4. Look out for that 4-degree temperature. We've really been looking for that. Sunny on Friday with a high of 26. The terrible cold will be gone by the weekend. Mostly cloudy on Saturday, a high of 41. We'll have a little snow on Sunday with a high of 37. But again, from now until Thursday, very, very, very cold. It's not recommended that you have any skin exposed for a long period of time. And again, this is a potentially deadly weather situation. Right now in Fort Dodge, pretty cold, 7 degrees above zero. Wind chill factor temperature hovering around 20 below. Sometimes even colder depending on the wind gusts. Wow, that's quite a situation. Anyway, the obituaries this hour brought to us by Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services at 1615 North 15th Street, Fort Dodge. You may contact Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services by calling 515-576-7128 or online at www.gundersonfuneralhome.com. Mr. Jerry Brown of Livermore has died. Services for Mr. Brown will be at 10:30 in the morning on Thursday in Livermore. Carolee Vincent has died at the age of 75. Carolee Vincent has died. Services are pending for Carolee Vincent. Sonora Rose Rickless has died at the age of 25. Services for Sonora Rose Rickless are pending as well. Obituaries this hour brought to us by Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services at 1615 North 15th Street, Fort Dodge. You may contact Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services by calling 515-576-7128 or online at www.gundersonfuneralhome.com. It's 236, very cold. Wind chill factor temperature right now, 20 to 30 below zero, maybe even more than that. I hate to tell you. We are expecting this sort of weather again until Thursday, so be careful. With a look at the closing market report at AM 1400 KVFD, here's Dwayne Murley.
Here's a look at how the markets closed today. March corn down a half a penny at 3.79 3/4. May cent at 3.88 1/4. July corn down a quarter penny at 3.96 1/4. September down a half a cent at 3.98 1/2. March soybeans down 2 cents at 9.23 1/4. May down 2 at 9.37. July beans down 2 cents at 9.49 3/4. August down to 1 3/4 at 9.54 1/2. March wheat closed down to 1 1/4 at 5.18 3/4. Soybean meal down 1.70 a ton at 3.12.20. February live cattle up 35 cents at 126.40. April up 52 at 127.37. January feeder cattle up a dime at 143.47. March up 72 at 144.35. February lean hogs down 40 cents at 57.97. April up 20 cents at 62.32. I'm Dwayne Murley.
Have you ever wanted to speak another language? Whether you want to speak Spanish, French, or German, Babbel's 10 to 15-minute lessons can get you speaking confidently in your new language within weeks.
I just started learning Spanish with Babbel, and it's really helping me with my pronunciation.
¿Cómo te llamas?
¿Cómo te llamas?
¿De dónde eres?
¿De dónde eres? Haha, I got it! I'm amazed how confidently I speak Spanish now. I wish I had tried Babbel sooner.
Babbel's award-winning technology gets you speaking right away. And best of all, you'll remember what you've learned. No wonder Babbel is the #1 selling language learning app in Europe. Try it for yourself and see why Babbel is the quick way to get conversational in a new language, like Spanish, German, Portuguese, and more. You can try Babbel for free. Go to Babbel.com or download the app and try it for free. That's Babbel, Babbel.com, or download the app to try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Party with a Purpose, Saturday, March 2nd during the 22nd Annual Sweetheart Gala. Imagine a world without heart disease or stroke. That's the driving mission of the American Heart Association. I'm Abigail Johnson, inviting you to join us at the Best Western Starlight Village. Social hour begins at 6. There'll be a silent and live auction, a DJ, and delicious dessert buffet and meal. Tickets are just $50 each. Come dance the night away at the 22nd Annual Sweetheart Gala, Saturday night, March 2nd at the Best Western Starlight Village in Fort Dodge.
Current price times 1,000 acres, carry the one. These days, it's hard to make the math work for your soybean fields. The BASF Liberty Link system with Liberty herbicide makes it easier. Start with a 2+ bushel per acre yield advantage. Add in lower system input costs and more complete weed control, and you get an extra $33 or more of profit potential per acre compared to Asgrow to Extend soybeans. Grow smart with Liberty Link and BASF. Always read and follow label directions.
Michael Devine at AM 1400 KVFD.
Listen to this.
Making radio great again.
I don't understand what is preventing you from laughing this off and giving me a big hug.
Michael Devine, the mayor of Manville.
It's a fancy title for a part-time job.
Michael Devine at AM 1400 KVFD.
All right, this is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. I'm Michael Devine. We are going to tell the truth. Make it matter will never be boring. That's the mantra, anyway. That's what we're really after here. You can always join the program by calling 515-955-1400. We're on Ustream, not Ustream. That's the second time I said that today. YouTube. Go to youtube.com, type in 1400 KVFD, and you can see as well as hear what happens in this studio. With me here is Pastor Austin Hill, and he is a minister with the First Presbyterian Church, and of course, we try to reconcile our faith with a decidedly non-Christian world. You know, I wanted to tell you, or I don't know if I've talked with you about this before. I think I did talk about it with Pastor Grenberg when he was still in town, and I believe I have talked about it with Father Boehm. I don't know. But my son grew up in the Presbyterian Church right here in town when Pastor David Feltman was here.
Yeah.
And there was also a couple of other another husband and wife minister team there as well, who were here just for a short time. Anyway, the point is, he joined the Marine Corps and was going off to war. And he asked me about, since he had been raised well in the church, he asked me about the commandment that we shall not kill.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the best I could do, and I rolled my eyes, my own reaction now, and well, I'd rather have you judged by 12 than carried by 6 to the grave. You know, and you have to shoot somebody, shoot them without apology. And as it turned out, he did have to do that more than one occasion. But I really saw my limitation here, and I called up Pastor Feldman and some of the other associates at the time.
Yeah,
and I said, "This is what we're dealing with, and I really can't go into depth with him. I hope you will." Pastor Feldman did talk with him, and a couple of the other associate pastors at the time. We're going back quite a ways now, 17, 18 years, and he was able to resolve it through his faith and through his belief system, that it was a righteous thing to do to go to war.
Yeah.
For his country. I think we should. Now, we used to go for God and country, but we don't do that anymore in the multicultural, wonderful paradise that we have here in the United States. So, but I do remember that in most wars, certainly starting with the Civil War, the soldiers had a hard time, in some cases, shooting each other.
Yeah.
Especially in the Civil War, when they would draw lines of battle, they would shoot over each other's head. They wanted to defend their beliefs, but at the same token, they just wanted to appear to defend their beliefs.
They didn't want to actually kill a neighbor.
No, I mean, they were concerned.
Yeah.
What counsel would you give someone who came to you with that?
Well, I think some of what you said really strikes me. I would be encouraged if someone came to me and said that the idea of killing another person is hard for them to consider. So I would start with that it's a good humane thing to not want to, glorify killing other people, and that you really are wrestling with this. And I would hope that no one would go into the armed services with a desire to kill. I mean, I think that would be a very serious red flag.
Well, there are people who do that, but they're nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a little crazy. Just by coincidence, my son, I was speaking with him yesterday. I went down for a grandchild's birthday party, and I that came up somehow. It's a real coincidence, or now we're talking about it. And he said, yeah, the Marine Corps knows that there's people that do that. They come to the Marine Corps because they want to kill somebody. But the Marine Corps gets them out of the Marine Corps as soon as they can identify them.
Yeah.
Because they're nuts.
Yeah, exactly. So, I guess
that's nutty. They don't want people like that.
Well, yeah. And especially if you're making life and death decisions, for your comrades.
Hey, let's just blast people,
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think we have to hope and trust that the higher ups in our armed services, as you're saying, can identify those kinds of individuals and do what they can to mitigate against that. But I think for me, that demonstrates a little bit of just the overall picture that I think not only killing on an individual level, but going to war in the first place should be seen as an option of last resort. Not something that we take lightly, not something that we enter into being cavalier and, let's just go in and, nuke those people or blow them all up to hell, that kind of thing.
Let me tell you, speaking as someone who's served overseas, every war movie you ever saw is crap.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
It's a miserable experience. It's hot. It's terrifying. It's boring. No, it's nothing.
Yeah. Well, and I remember back in 2003 when we went into war with Iraq at the time.
Yeah.
And let's see, I would have been 18, 19, 20 years old, something like that at that same time. And so a lot of friends of mine, were like, yeah, we're going to war. We're going to go kick some butt over there. We probably said some other choice words. And I don't think that's a proper response.
That's almost a line from All Quiet on the Western Front, which is probably the greatest war book I ever read. And it was written by a German soldier.
Yeah.
In World War I. And, just the idealism of these young people.
Yeah.
And they'd been whipped into a patriotic frenzy by their leaders and even religious leaders. And off to war they went, and they found it was just terrible trench warfare.
You can't even,
up to their ankles in mud, and rats were everywhere, and terrible cold, and the fear of being killed every moment. And it was just a terrible, terrible experience.
Yeah. And I think what's helpful is when we have political leaders who know that reality firsthand, because I think they're that much more wary of getting people into those kinds of conflicts. And so I really do think there are times when war is the last resort. I don't think anyone, anytime, still should celebrate war. I think we should celebrate the end of war.
That would be nice. We've had that. That World War I was the war to end all war.
Yeah, and then here we were 20 years later with World War II, and I think there's something a little bit lost on Veterans Day as we've changed it to calling it Veterans Day as opposed to Armistice Day. Now, I guess I want to be clear. I'm not saying that we shouldn't honor our veterans, but sometimes maybe in honoring our veterans, we forget that day first commemorated peace. And as we honor our veterans, and we don't also recognize that day first was to celebrate the end of war, maybe we sometimes kind of glorify being in war or the profession, over and above what people in the armed services are trying to achieve, which ultimately is peace. And that should be our goal. So going back to, can there be just war? I do think that there are times when taking arms against other individuals or groups really are the last resort. And now, as Christians, we're called to turn the other cheek. But when other people are being innocently slaughtered, I think it's definitely within our bounds morally to stand up, even to use lethal force to defend those who cannot defend themselves. I think every individual has to decide for themselves about whether this calling to turn the other cheek means whether they would give their own life if someone were attacking them, the whole self-defense kind of thing. But I think certainly to defend others is very much in line. I would think Christ would be okay with that. In fact, Christ commended the faith of people who were soldiers in his day. And you would think if Jesus had something against those soldiers in their profession, that Jesus would have said something about that.
I would think so. I didn't see, and you certainly know more about it than I do, I have never seen a Christian minister of any kind, whether they be a Lutheran or Presbyterian or Catholic, Baptist, Methodist, really speak to Jesus' attitude on war and violence. Is there such... The Catholics do believe, and Father Boehm, as I mentioned, does believe in the concept of a just war. I believe it came from Aquinas, if I'm not mistaken.
And and then later on there was one of the popes, and I'm gonna forget which one, that kind of had an official proclamation of the church for just war as well. And that would have been around, I want to say 1000 or 1200.
Could have been Julius. I don't know. I've heard that before, though.
But kind of around the time of the Crusades, they actually had kind of a formal doctrine of just war.
Now, there's a point. I mean, it was believed that the Catholic Church urged its parishioners, especially around that time, to have a lot of children, and came up with ideas to biblically instruct their parishioners to have a lot of children, so that the church and the Vatican, is particularly, would be protected from the Muslim horde.
Yeah.
And I hope a lot of people remember their history enough. There are many Islamic communities in Europe, and the Islamists in the mid 14 or 1500s had advanced as far as Vienna. Vienna, Austria. As a matter of fact, there was a Battle of Vienna that finally drove the Muslims from Central Europe.
Wow.
But Islam at the time was on the march.
Yeah.
And they were very much fighting for their faith. And we were very much, at that time, the Europeans were very much fighting for theirs.
And where it gets so complicated is, the whole, as you mentioned earlier, the for God and country, is that it's not always Christians fighting non-Christians or, other things like that alongside the country. It's often Christians killing each other. And not that makes it any better or worse, but it is striking that you have Christians who would kill one another over, political allegiance and other things. And that's where, you look at our First and Second World War, but even more crazy than that, if you go back to, I think, the 17th century, you get like the 30 Years' War, and those are religious wars. I mean, you have people straight up killing each other over whether people could be Protestants or Catholics. And that's recent history.
Yes, it is.
And that's striking in of itself. I think that, that is completely Christians missing the overall point of the Christian faith, killing each other over difference in doctrine.
Well, and that was serious business back then, especially in France. The Huguenots, who really founded South Carolina. Huguenots were French Protestants who had essentially been run out of the country by Catholics. They were warring.
Yeah.
And the Huguenots in that part of the world, or the Protestants in that part of the world, lost.
Yeah.
They certainly hung on to Germany and the northern European countries. But there was a long-standing anti-Catholic feeling in South Carolina that, from what I understand, even though there's plenty of Catholic churches, it's still part of the culture there.
Well, and what I think of that's probably so tragic about all of this is, go back to the First World War. And, anyone who's had an 8th grade history class or whatever, you learn, of the alliances, and with the assassination of was Franz Ferdinand, I think, and that's what
Yep.
started everything off. And so here are these Christian nations killing each other by the millions.
Mm-hmm.
And almost, I mean, I would say 90% of people couldn't really identify what the cause was, other than, Germany is our enemy, or Britain is our enemy. And it's just tragic that, especially when you get actually down into the trenches, and the astounding similarities between, say, a German 18-year-old soldier who was, say, a German Lutheran and someone from Britain.
Let's go to the phones real quickly. AM 1400 KVFD. Good afternoon. You're on the air with Pastor Hill.
Yes, Pat. I'd like to send out a happy birthday.
You want to send out a happy birthday?
Yeah.
Okay. Certainly. Go ahead. Whose birthday is it?
Tomorrow it will be Lindsay Delanoy,
And how old is Lindsay?
25.
25. Now, you really want to call, I bet you want to call KKZ over on the other side of this building. Is that who you were trying to get in touch with?
Yeah, 955-1000.
Yeah, this is 955-1400. 955-1000 is KIAQ, Hot Country K97.
Okay.
So I can.
I keep calling 955-1000. It rings and rings and rings and rings.
Oh, and it rolls over here, huh?
Mhm.
It rings and rings. Nobody's over there. You'll have to call in the morning to make sure you get that birthday on the air. Oh, so you got tired of calling 1000 and tried this one, huh?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I wish I could help you more, but the best idea is to call tomorrow morning, 955-1000.
Is there any special time or?
Yeah, 6 to 9, they do a live show. Call this number. Oh, this other guy.
That's great.
That is great.
You never know what you're going to get.
You
right?
don't know what you're going to get. Here we are talking war and God and death and justification. Some lady wants to say happy birthday.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the break we needed.
Yeah. Well, it does. I think that does just demonstrate, how horrible it is that you have these young men, and now in the 21st century, young men and women, I mean, ordinary people who are being called to do such horrible things. Now, I'm so thankful for those who've said yes to the call in our country on behalf of all of us, and they defend the cause of freedom. And so I think it's tremendous, but I do think we should lament anytime we are called to go to war.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean we discourage those who go to war.
Again, war is such an awful thing. And this is the truth. The people who suffer the most are civilians, naturally. They're children, women, innocent people. In every single war we have here, even if soldiers are careful when tramping through their front yard or fields, it's still a problem. And it's just an ugly, ugly thing. You're right.
And so I think for us in the church today, I think it's still definitely very beneficial to honor and celebrate those who have answered that call, especially those who've paid the ultimate price, who've given their own lives or gone through tremendous suffering. But I do think we should do everything in our power as Christians to prevent war. And so that means the more we can kind of stand against like a fear mongering or fear of the other, or when people have more inflammatory kind of rhetoric, or when people want to start identifying others as enemies, I think our first response should be trying to diffuse those kinds of situations and help people see the humanity in others. And one of I think maybe the benefits of technology is that strangely now, through Twitter and Facebook and whatnot, you can see what the ordinary life of someone on the other side of the world is like in ways that you simply never could before.
That's wild, isn't it?
And so, in previous wars, when we would demonize the other side, when we would say all these things about these people that made it easier for us to want to kill them, it's harder for us now, because you can quite literally go online and you can see, what a communist's life looks like online. And it's a little bit harder, to pull that trigger when you know something about that person, or to press the button and launch that missile, or whatever it might be. And so I think the more we can do to, I think, really highlight the horrors of war, I think that might make us all think twice, about when we send our troops places, and really make us consider, is this the last possible resort, or is there some other choice?
Well, there are faiths who believe it is the duty, and yes, I'm looking at Islam here, to kill infidels.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's
yeah,
their duty. I think that's it's not the way we feel, is it?
No, not at all. Yeah, and I should hope that we would believe that as Christians, but I know definitely growing up with my own friends, there have been even times myself where we gloried in war, and we gloried in killing people who didn't believe the same things we did. And I remember, as a teenager myself, being excited that we were going to war.
Well, that's not unusual for young people.
Yeah,
you get a couple of years on you, or you experience war. John McCain, who I didn't always agree with, said the most anti-war people in the world are veterans.
Yeah.
And he's correct. He said we should always be prepared to go to war, but it's a terrible thing.
Yeah,
we should know that. And a lot of people have accused him of wanting war, but again, he always said, no, war is necessary, but it's terrible. Again, the most anti-war people in the world are veterans, and veterans of war, and I believe that absolutely. Pastor Austin Hill has been our guest. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
3:00 in the afternoon. This is KVFD, Fort Dodge, Iowa.
It's everything digital on the Kim Commando Show every Saturday from 11 to 2 on the voice of Fort Dodge, AM 1400 KVFD, Fort Dodge.
Ramping up the pressure on Lisa Brady, Fox News. The U.S. slapping sanctions on the elected president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, days after formally recognizing opposition leader Juan Guaido, who's claimed power.
The United States is holding accountable those responsible for Venezuela's tragic decline.
Treasury Chief Steve Mnuchin moments ago.
Today, Treasury took action against Venezuela's state-owned oil company, PDVSA, to help prevent the further diversion of Venezuela's assets by former President Maduro.
In effect, that means blocking $7 billion in assets. At the same briefing, National Security Advisor John Bolton not ruling out military action, only saying that all options are on the table. U.S. diplomats remain in Venezuela. A number of other countries have also recognized Guaido as the interim president, but Russia, Cuba, and China have not. Bolton is calling on all responsible nations, as he put it, to recognize Guaido. All of this happening at the White House press briefing, where spokeswoman Sarah Sanders is likely to also get questions about the upcoming negotiations set for later this week on avoiding another possible government shutdown. A 19-year-old from El Salvador now facing multiple counts of murder in Nevada, where 4 people were killed in their homes.
We are now officially moving forward. Guzman.
Washoe County DA Chris Hicks just announcing the upgraded charges. Martinez Guzman was arrested last week and initially charged with weapons possession and selling jewelry belonging to several victims. Officials have said he's in the U.S. illegally. The week starts with a sell-off on Wall Street. The Dow down 209 points at the closing bell. At one point during the session, though, was down about 400. This is Fox News.
36 days. That's how long it takes the average company to find their next hire. Glassdoor can help you quickly find the right job candidate in half the resumes. From 62 million job seekers, Glassdoor only matches you with qualified candidates who have the skills and experience your small business needs to grow. And Glassdoor hires are committed. They're 30% more likely to stay with your business longer. Go to glassdoor.com/hire. Glassdoor. Find the right fit for your business.
This is Peter on his motorcycle. And this is Peter off his motorcycle.
Please move your paper off my desk. Thank you.
On his motorcycle.
I feel so alive!
Off his motorcycle.
I feel like we covered that already, so...
On.
Wow! Look at the ocean!
Off.
Look at this article I found about urban planning.
You're better on your bike. Progressive helps keep you on it. Get a quote in as little as 3 minutes at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Nonpartisan report finds the U.S. economy did take a hit from the shutdown.
The 35-day partial government shutdown cost the U.S. economy $3 billion it won't recover. That's according to new estimates from the Congressional Budget Office. The CBO report says economic growth in the last quarter of 2018 was down 0.1%. It's expected to be down 0.2% the first quarter of this year. Furloughed federal workers not contributing as much to economic activity and a delay in federal spending on goods and services are the main reasons of dampened economic growth, the CBO says.
Fox's Jared Halpern on Capitol Hill. An extradition hearing set for a Louisiana shooting suspect accused of killing 5 people Friday before being captured in Virginia.
21-year-old Dakota Thoreau is in Richmond County Court without an attorney, according to sheriff's officials, before he's transferred back to Louisiana in the killings of his parents, his girlfriend, her father, and brother in separate shootings Friday near Baton Rouge, before fleeing to Virginia, where he was arrested outside his grandmother's house.
There's a lot of family members out there that are hurting right now, and our prayers go out to those family members.
Ascension Parish Sheriff Bobby Weber has investigators weigh charges and piece together motive. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
Bundle up doesn't quite cover it in parts of the upper Midwest where wind chills could plummet to 60 below zero by Wednesday. That means a storm dumping more than a foot of snow in parts of Wisconsin and Minnesota could also turn from rain to snow or ice in parts of the South.
We have a lot of people that are going to be in town this week. We want to keep them safe.
That's Georgia Governor Brian Kemp days before Atlanta hosts the Super Bowl, saying they're preparing for the worst, hoping for the best. Again, recapping Wall Street, a sell-off mainly over global economic growth concerns. The Dow.
Your news, your town, your station. KVFD News Web.
Good afternoon. I'm Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. A child was killed when a vehicle carrying 8 people from Nebraska crashed along an icy interstate in southwestern Iowa Cass County last night. Radio Iowa's Rick Hansen reports.
All of the victims were from Grand Island, Nebraska. The Iowa State Patrol reports a 2004 GMC driven by 40-year-old Jesus Cantero Perez was traveling westbound on I-80 at around 10:30 p.m. near the Marnie exit when the vehicle went out of control due to freezing rain and icy conditions. The vehicle entered the ditch and rolled onto its passenger side. The passenger in the vehicle, 9-year-old Joshua Tavares, who was not wearing a seatbelt, died at the scene. Cantor Perez and his passengers, 35-year-old Wendy Tavares, 11-year-old Ashley Tavares, 12-year-old Kimberly Tavares, 11-year-old Yamilet Cantero, 15-year-old Jonathan Tavares, and 10-year-old Emmanuel Cantero were all injured in the crash. 4 of the injured children were not wearing their seatbelts. Both adults were buckled up. I'm Rick Hansen reporting for Radio Iowa News.
California Senator Kamala Harris is announcing the backing of Iowa Democrat Deidre DeJear. She travels to the early 2020 caucus state Monday. DeJear was Iowa's first African-American to win a primary for statewide office last year, but lost in her attempt to unseat Iowa's Republican Secretary of State. DeJear has since been courted by several Democrats taking steps toward running for president. Harris campaigned with DeJear in Iowa last fall after the two met in Washington, D.C. and California. Harris is scheduled to travel to Des Moines to participate in a CNN town hall-style event live Monday evening. Harris announced her candidacy for president January 21st. She also announced that Will Dubs, a former aide to Hillary Clinton in 2016, will direct the California senator's 2020 Iowa campaign. The body of a missing Marshalltown teenager has been found. Radio Iowa's Ken Hughey reports.
After 5 days of searching, Marshalltown police say the body of 13-year-old Corey Brown was found Sunday morning in a secluded area on the west side of Marshalltown. Brown left his south side home on Tuesday evening, the 22nd, after what was reported as a typical parent-teen dispute. The Brown family discovered Corey's disappearance Wednesday morning and found security camera video from their house of Corey leaving and heading south. That appears to be the last time he was seen alive. The Brown family has requested that their privacy be honored while thanking all the public safety personnel and volunteers who, quote, worked diligently, unquote, in the search for Corey. Marshalltown Police Chief Mike Tupper says the investigation is continuing into the 13-year-old's disappearance and death, but adds that while there is no indication of any criminal activity, all scenarios are being investigated. For Radio Iowa, Ken Hughey, Marshalltown.
This has been Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. Have a great
Here's Dread KVFD Weatherology forecast. A wind chill advisory begins at 6 p.m. this evening and continues until noon tomorrow. A wind chill warning begins at noon tomorrow and continues until noon Thursday. A winter weather advisory continues until 3 p.m. this afternoon. Partly cloudy skies with daytime highs approaching teen this afternoon. Winds out of the northwest. From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Currently, it's 7 above.
Start the new year off in style at Jim's Carpet One Floor and Home during our semi-annual flooring and clearance sale, where the savings are so big we only do it twice a year. Hi, this is Dean Sternberg. Now find extreme vinyl and more with savings of $100, $250, or even $500 on select floors. Featuring all new Oath carpets by Resistant, soft and lush, ultra tough, and truly waterproof with a 10-year no exclusion stain warranty. Come visit our Steals and Deals room for additional savings. Don't miss the semi-annual flooring sale and clearance going on now at Jim's Carpet One.
Are you more than $10,000 in debt? Feel like you're on a never-ending treadmill, staying in one place and never getting ahead with those minimum payments? You feel like there is no way out? Don't let the credit card companies bully you anymore. There are programs in place to help you get free of your debt, and you don't have to pay the entire amount you owe. The program at Total Financial Freedom can help you get debt-free in months instead of decades. Get off the debt treadmill and stop the harassment. Get free of credit card debt, signature loans, department store cards, internet loans, and medical bills. Call now at 866-844-7344 for free information. For about 10 years, Total Financial Freedom has helped thousands. They're A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, too. Get off the endless cycle without having to declare bankruptcy. You'll have the right to settle your debt for a mere fraction of what you owe. Call Total Financial now at 866-844-7344. That's 866-844-7344. Have you ever wanted to speak another language? Whether you want to speak Spanish, French, or German, Babbel's 10 to 15-minute lessons can get you speaking confidently in your new language within weeks.
I just started learning Spanish with Babbel, and it's really helping me with my pronunciation.
¿Cómo te llamas?
¿Cómo te llamas?
¿De dónde eres?
¿De dónde eres? Haha, I got it! I'm amazed how confidently I speak Spanish now. I wish I had tried Babbel sooner.
Babbel's award-winning technology gets you speaking right away. And best of all, you'll remember what you've learned. No wonder Babbel is the #1 selling language learning app in Europe. Try it for yourself and see why Babbel is the quick way to get conversational in a new language, like Spanish, German, Portuguese, and more. You can try Babbel for free. Go to Babbel.com or download the app and try it for free. That's Babbel, Babbel.com, or download the app to try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Take the worry out of winter with a winter weather advisor on KVFD, brought to you by Community Health Center Fort Dodge, offering dental, behavioral health, and general medical assistance for men, women, and children. They're committed to your well-being. Community Health Center. Get to know them. And Creative Cakes, making life sweet with espresso, lunch, gourmet cupcakes, and other sweet treats. Creative Cakes in the Crossroads Mall, Fort Dodge. They make life sweet. Listen for the winter weather advisor on the Voice of Fort Dodge, AM 1400 KVFD.
Are you more than $10,000 in debt? Feel like you're on a never-ending treadmill, staying in one place and never...
Yeah, Laura?
Yes.
Yeah, hang on just a minute.
Total Financial Freedom can help you get debt-free in months instead of decades. Get off the debt treadmill and stop the harassment. Get free of credit card debt, signature loans, department store cards, internet loans, and medical bills. Call now at 866-844-7344 for free information. For about 10 years, Total Financial Freedom has helped thousands. They're A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, too. Get off the endless cycle without having to declare bankruptcy. You'll have the right to settle your debt for a mere fraction of what you owe. Call Total Financial now at 866-844-7344. That's 866-844-7344.
Michael Devine at AM 1400.
In the name of justice and the American way of life.
With 60 rounds of freedom.
Well, sure.
Are you stupid? Michael Devine, the mayor of Manville.
It's a fancy title for a part-time job.
Michael Devine at AM 1400 KVFD.
All right, here we go. AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. You can always join this program by calling 515-955-1400. We're available video and audio on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, type in 1400 KVFD, and you'll see what's happening in the studio as well as hear what's happening in the studio. And, of course, there's recordings there of every show I do. Laura Bellin is a writer and journalist, and she has a blog called Bleeding Heartland. Laura's on the phone with us now. Hi, Laura.
Hi, thanks for having me, Michael.
Oh, it's always great to have you. I've had Laura on a couple of times in the past because I like her writing. I like sharp writing, and Laura possesses that skill. She's also an unapologetic liberal, which doesn't mean anything to me. This is the United States of America. I'm an unapologetic traditionalist, conservative, whatever you want to call me. I'm there, and everybody knows I've had this radio program for 10 years, and the message has been the same. And I think when we engage honestly and openly, we move forward. Maybe that's a little idealistic for an old cynic like me, Laura. I don't know.
My parents canceled out each other's votes in every election. I was raised by a Republican, so I have no problem with people of different views.
No, neither do I. The reason this time I asked Laura Bellin of Bleeding Heartland, and by the way, you can access her website, Bleeding Heartland. Is it .org or .com? .com. And she's on Facebook or Twitter at Bleeding Heartland. You can find out what she does there. I think a lot of you folks listening today are pretty familiar with Laura Bellin. The reason I've asked Laura to be on today is she recently applied for credentials down at the State House while we're in session. She was denied. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I applied for a press credential. I applied by email, and I was granted one right away.
I should say I've only been denied by the Iowa House. So the Iowa Senate staff processed my application and told me that my credential was approved.
The Iowa Senate approved you. That is unusual. That is odd. Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate with you because maybe this is what the House is thinking, that anybody can put out a blog, that anybody could get online and create a blog and start putting out their opinions. And if they granted a press credential to you, they'd have to grant a press credential to every 17-year-old with a blog. Maybe that's what they're thinking. I don't know. I read in the Des Moines Register, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, the report on what we're talking about with Laura Bellin today is on my Facebook page, Facebook at AM 1400 KVFT. And I didn't see really that they gave having said that, I still haven't seen a real convincing reason to ban you or not give you a press credential, I should say, not ban, press credential. I haven't seen other than they're concerned about granting press credentials to every kid with a blog. I haven't seen a convincing reason to deny you.
Well, they didn't cite that reason. And I want to say, first of all, that there are many standard definitions of a journalist or a news media. The one that the Investigative Reporters and Editors, which is an organization representing journalists, uses is anyone substantially engaged in news gathering, presentation, or production in either print, broadcast, or online. Another definition that the Iowa Judicial Branch uses, or the Iowa Supreme Court said, is that any person who regularly gathers, prepares, photographs, records, writes, edits, reports, or publishes news or information about matters of public interest in any medium. So someone who just started a blog and wrote a few things on the blog, I can understand why that person wouldn't get credentials. But I've written myself more than 7,000 posts about Iowa politics since 2007. Hundreds of them have been about the Iowa legislature. This month alone, I've written a number of posts about the Iowa House or the Iowa Senate. So there's no question that I published a substantial amount of original news content about the Iowa legislature. And by any standard, I mean, I've spoken with journalists in other states. By any reasonable standard of who would qualify for a State House press credential, I would get one. Now, the rule that initially the House Chief Clerk, before she stopped responding to me, she said, press credentials aren't open to members of the public. And then she cited rules in the Iowa House that govern the press. But those rules don't say anything about who qualifies as press. All they say are things about where members of the media can be in the chamber. So, for instance, you can't just wander all over the Iowa House floor. You have to be in the press box.
Right.
So that's completely reasonable. So they need, if they have a standard, they need to apply it uniformly, and they're not applying it uniformly. There have been at least a half a dozen other reporters who write only for online publications who have received Iowa House credentials since 2011, which is when the Republicans have been in control. Craig Robinson, who writes the Iowa Republican blog, he had credentials to cover the House in 2011, 12, and 13. There were a number of reporters who worked for either the Iowa Independent or IowaPolitics.com or the Iowa Watchdog website. Those are all defunct now, but they had a number of reporters over the years who were credentialed in the Iowa House. So there is no consistent policy that says they don't credential people who write for online news sources. So they really don't have any legal grounds for their position, and I think that's why the House Chief Clerk stopped responding to me on January 4th. The last email I got from her was on January 4th. I've replied 6 times since then, asking her to cite specific language in rules or statute that justify excluding me from credentials.
Well, like it or not, ladies and gentlemen, the blogs in online news services and opinion services, that is the wave of the future. I mean, newspapers and radio stations, frankly, are, unless they change dramatically, and we're trying to do that here at KVFD with video services that I mentioned at the top of the hour with on YouTube and that sort of thing. And we need to be far more aggressive with local news, live coverage of local news and that sort of thing. But as it stands right now, radio stations and newspapers are signing off right and left. Most people get their information from online services.
And honestly, that's one reason I've covered the Iowa legislature for 12 years. I've never applied for press credentials before this year. But one reason I did is because of the decline in State House reporting. The Associated Press, which used to always have 2 reporters down there during the session, only has 1. William Petrosky, who was a longtime Des Moines Register reporter covering the State House, took a early retirement plan.
Oh, he did. Bill Petrosky's out.
They replaced him, but the person they have, and he's a very good reporter. I'm not trying to criticize anyone, but so that's someone with a lot of institutional knowledge and experience who retired. The longtime Iowa Public Radio reporter who covered the State House retired. And so it occurred to me late last year that really maybe I should spend a little bit more time down at the State House. I follow it closely. I tend to watch the live stream. Anyone can get on the Iowa legislature's website and watch live what's happening in the House or Senate chamber. So you don't have to be a journalist to follow it to some degree. But I thought, well, I should probably spend some more time in the building. And that was my whole reason for applying for a credential.
Well, I have to tell you, when I read in the paper over the weekend that you'd been denied a credential, I thought to myself, I work at a 1,000 watt radio station in Fort Dodge, Iowa. I'm not exactly the center of the media universe, even in Iowa. And I was given a credential, no questions asked. They asked me to verify my employment. I did, and I got the credential. Bada bing.
Right.
So
I mean, there are lots of people who are on the list. It's a public list of who has credentials, and many of the people don't do much reporting on the legislature at all. So, and I don't have a problem with them being credentialed. I don't think they should be very restrictive in the credentialing. I think anyone who is engaged in news gathering who wants to cover the legislature should be able to get a credential. So right now, I mean, I'm shocked that it's even come to this because I didn't anticipate any problems. I didn't have any problems when I applied. I sent the same message to the Secretary of the Iowa Senate that I did to the House Chief Clerk, and he immediately told me the staffer to contact, and that woman immediately processed my application, and I didn't expect to have problems on the House side.
Well, this is pure speculation, of course, but I'm going to think that somebody's mad at you somewhere, that somebody somewhere is mad at you and wanted to deny you a credential just out of spite, especially now that you can't get a hold of anybody in the Iowa House to really give you a definitive answer.
Well, I've been very critical of the Republican leadership and Republican policies and some of the legislators and many of the bills they've passed. So it wouldn't surprise me that a lot of people over there aren't fond of my writing. I mean, unfortunately for them, under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and Article 1, Section 7 of the Iowa Constitution, government officials can't restrict freedom of the press, and they can't have a standard that depends on the viewpoint expressed in the press.
Well, I've been pretty ruthless with liberals and Democrats in the Iowa House and Senate as well. But it wouldn't occur to me that someone would deny me a press credential because of that.
It shouldn't.
And beyond that, we're kind of moving away from the Uncle Walter Cronkite School of Journalism. By that, I mean that very little of the news content that we're going to get in the future is going to be untainted by opinion. you'll be able to really feed your own prejudice by whatever news service that you get. And I think for younger people, that's already happened. They're going to go to a news service that fits into their cultural and philosophical view of the world. Period.
Well, I mean, look, the tradition of the American media, it's kind of a recent idea that the media should be objective. In the 19th century, most newspapers expressed a partisan viewpoint. So you have the Davenport Democrat or the Boone Times Republican. And the First Amendment was never intended to only protect people who don't express overt political views.
Well, and I know you do this as well. I try to find out the facts from a couple of different sources at least, or multiple news sources. I'll present the facts, and then I'll take off on it. I think that's my job. I think it's probably your job. You can speak for yourself, of course. Mm-hmm. But I think, again, that's the way news is going to be in the future, whether print or video, audio, all the above. The facts will be discovered, and there will be an opinion given, all in the same paragraph, all in the same segment on the radio or television or wherever it is. That's the way it's going to be. So if you're being denied a credential because you're a liberal, that's kind of a problem. I don't like the way that sounds at all.
Yeah, I mean, my reporting, I do sometimes blend reporting and commentary, but it's grounded in research and fact, and I form my opinions based on my research, and I always show my work. I link to the facts or the sources that I've found. So people don't have to agree with my opinions, but I do have the right to express them. And if a government body has a standard for giving credentials to members of the media, that standard can't have anything to do with the viewpoints expressed.
Well, it's hardly a new thing to blend news with opinion or even commercials in some cases. The great radio commentator Paul Harvey, I still remember this after all these years. He started off a segment by saying ominously, "There's a killer in your basement in the dark, lurking in the dark. And you can kill that, and you can get rid of that killer with roach proof. Yes, roach proof." And he went on and on into a commercial. He was always doing that. "There's a killer in your basement, you know. You can get rid of that killer with a roach proof."
Well, even to this day, the Iowa House credentials some newspaper columnists, Kathy Abradovich of the Des Moines Register, credentials, and before her, David Yepsen, and they expressed political views. And sometimes they were more writing straight reports. Some of my reports are really newsy without a lot of opinion, but it just shouldn't have any bearing on whether the Iowa legislature views you as a member of the media. And like I said, I'm surprised that this is even a problem.
I'm surprised it is as well. I'll get a hold of Assistant Majority Leader Mike Sexton on this, and our Representative Ann Meyer. I'll send him a text this afternoon, ask him about this very thing.
Thank you.
And we'll find out. We'll find out a reason anyway. I mean, this so far we've seen is, okay, we just don't like you, so we're not going to give you a press credential. That doesn't sound good to me.
Well, what they said is that I'm a member of the public, not a member of the media, but they haven't explained how that could be. Like I said, I've written hundreds of articles about the Iowa legislature, so I'm not a member of the media is very strange.
All right, Laura Bellin of Bleeding Heartland has been our guest, and again, she is a well-known blogger, and you can find her page at Bleeding Heartland. Excuse me, bleedingheartland.com, or she's on Facebook or Twitter. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks very much.
All right. This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge.
Michael Devine at AM 1400 KVFD.
Listen to this.
Making radio great again.
I don't understand what is preventing you from laughing this off and giving me a big hug.
Michael Devine, the mayor of Manville.
It's a fancy title for a part-time job.
Michael Devine at AM 1400 KVFD.
Well, there we go. Laura Bellin of Bleeding Heartland. Yeah, liberal, no doubt, but she should have a press credential. Come on, boys. 327, dangerous cold out there. Be careful. I mean, be careful. News is coming up at AM 1400 KVFD, the voice for Dodge.
Every morning when I wake, a feeling soon begins to overtake me. Ringing in my ears, resounds through my brain and finally surrounds me.
There is fire, there is light, there is passion, fever and fury. Yeah, there is love and there there is hate, there is longing, anger, and worry.
Oh, I am the flame. Feel it touch my heart. And down in my core is the hottest part. I can run without fear.
Good Samaritan Society Manson is looking for a registered nurse to be a part of their leadership team and serve as MDS and rehab coordinator. RNs applying for this 30-hour-a-week position must be in good standing with the state of Iowa. If you want to enjoy the benefits of working in a Bronze Award 5-star Christian care facility, apply online for the MDS position at good-sam.com. That's good-sam.com. Good Samaritan Society is an equal opportunity employer. Women, minorities, and veterans are encouraged to apply.
Your news. KVFD News when it breaks.
Good afternoon. I'm Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. A child was killed when a vehicle carrying 8 people from Nebraska crashed along an icy interstate in southwestern Iowa, Cass County last night. Radio Iowa's Rick Hansen reports.
All of the victims were from Grand Island, Nebraska. The Iowa State Patrol reports a 2004 GMC driven by 40-year-old Jesus Cantero Perez was traveling westbound on I-80 at around 10:30 p.m. near the Marnie exit, and the vehicle went out of control due to freezing rain and icy conditions. The vehicle entered the ditch and rolled onto its passenger side. The passenger in the vehicle, 9-year-old Joshua Tavares, who was not wearing a seatbelt, died at the scene. Cantor Perez and his passengers, 35-year-old Wendy Tavares, 11-year-old Ashley Tavares, 12-year-old Kimberly Tavares, 11-year-old Yamilet Cantero, 15-year-old Jonathan Tavares, and 10-year-old Emmanuel Cantero were all injured in the crash. 4 of the injured children were not wearing their seatbelts. Both adults were buckled up. I'm Rick Hansen reporting for Radio Iowa News.
California Senator Kamala Harris is announcing the backing of Iowa Democrat Deidre DeJear as she travels to the early 2020 caucus state Monday. DeJear was Iowa's first African-American to win a primary for statewide office last year, but lost in her attempt to unseat Iowa's Republican Secretary of State. DeJear has since been courted by several Democrats taking steps toward running for president. Harris campaigned with DeJear in Iowa last fall after the two met in Washington, D.C. and California. Harris is scheduled to travel to Des Moines to participate in a CNN town hall-style event live Monday evening. Harris announced her candidacy for president January 21st. She also announced that Will Dubs, a former aide to Hillary Clinton in 2016, will direct the California Senator's 2020 Iowa campaign. The body of a missing Marshalltown teenager has been found. Radio Iowa's Ken Hughey reports.
After 5 days of searching, Marshalltown police say the body of 13-year-old Corey Brown was found Sunday morning in a secluded area on the west side of Marshalltown. Brown left his south side home on Tuesday evening, the 22nd, after what was reported as a typical parent-teen dispute. The Brown family discovered Corey's disappearance Wednesday morning and found security camera video from their house of Corey leaving and heading south. That appears to be the last time he was seen alive. The Brown family has requested that their privacy be honored while thanking all the public safety personnel and volunteers who, quote, worked diligently, unquote, in the search for Corey. Marshalltown Police Chief Mike Tupper says the investigation is continuing into the 13-year-old's disappearance and death, but adds that while there is no indication of any criminal activity, all scenarios are being investigated. For Radio Iowa, Ken Hughey, Town.
This has been Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. Have a great day.
This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge, 3:32, 28 minutes before 4 o'clock. First of all, the weather forecast is an absolute disaster. Very dangerous wind chill factor temperatures will be with us until Thursday. Please be aware of that. It could be 40 to 50 below. It's just nuts out there. Wind chill factor temperatures this afternoon could be 20 to 30 degrees below zero. Overnight, our regular temperature will be 5 degrees below zero. Wind chill factor temperatures, again, could be 30, maybe 40 degrees below zero. It's just ridiculous. Tomorrow, sunny and cold. Temperatures, a high temperature tomorrow, 3 degrees below zero. Or probably late in the afternoon will be 8 degrees below zero. That's just the regular temperature. Wind chill factor temperature, 30 degrees below zero and more. On Wednesday, sunny and cold. Our high temperature, are you ready for this? Our high temperature will be 13 degrees below zero. That's not a wind chill factor temperature. Wednesday will be a terribly cold day. Again, dangerous wind chill factor temperatures Wednesday night into Thursday. On Thursday, mostly cloudy and cold. Our high around 4. Hallelujah, Friday's coming. It'll be sunny on Friday with a high of 26 degrees. On Sunday, chance of rain and snow, a high of 37. Saturday, mostly cloudy, high 41. So the weekend will be considerably warmer, but from now until Thursday, it will be very, very dangerously cold. So please keep that in mind. This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. It's 3:33. Obituaries this hour brought to us by Loftus Fighter Receivers Funeral Home at 307 South 12th Street here in Fort Dodge. You may contact Loftus Fighter Receivers Funeral Home and Cremation Services by calling 515-576-3156 or online at www.loftusfighterreceiversfuneralhome.com. Carolee Vinson has died at the age of 75. Services for Carolee Vinson are pending at Loftus Fighter Receivers Funeral Home. Sonora Rose Rickless has passed away at the very young age of 25. Services for Sonora Rose Rickless are pending at Loftus Fighter Receivers Funeral Home and Cremation Services. Obituaries this hour brought to us by Loftus Fighter Receivers Funeral Home and Cremation Services at 307 South 12th Street in Fort Dodge. You may contact Loftus Fighter Receivers Funeral Home and Cremation Services by calling 515-576-3156 or online at www.loftusfighterreceiversfuneralhome.com. 335, our temperature right now. Well, the wind chill factor temperature is just out of control. Our temperature right now is 2 degrees above zero. Wind chill factor temperature 20 to 30. Kind of depends on how strong the wind is blowing and how sustained of winds that we do have. But needless to say, very dangerous cold right now. This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. With a look at the closing market report, here's Dwayne Murley.
Here's a look at how the markets closed today. March corn down a half a penny at 3.79 3/4. May down a half a cent at 3.88 1/4. July corn down a quarter penny at 3.96 1/4. September down a half a cent at 3.98 1/2. March soybeans down 2 cents at 9.23 1/4. May down 2 at 9.37. July beans down 2 cents at 9.49 3/4. August down to 1 3/4 at 9.54 1/2. March wheat closed down to 1 1/4 at 5.18 3/4. Soybean meal down to 1.70 a ton at 3.12.20. February live cattle up 35 cents at 126.40. April up 52 at 127.37. January feeder cattle up a dime at 143.47. March up 72 at 144.35. February lean hogs down 40 cents at 57.97. April up 20 cents at 62.32. I'm Dwayne Murley.
Wild rice is full of nutrients, but is it rice? Hi, I'm Julie Harker with Healthy Living on Brownfield.
Wild rice, believe it or not, is actually not even really rice at all. It's actually a seed of a wild water grass that's found kind of around the Great Lakes region. And so it's kind of an old grain that has been around for just, years and years. And it's very, very good. And it is a whole grain.
Jenna Smith with the University of Illinois Extension says wild rice is a whole grain with more nutrients and fiber than processed white rice.
When you compare it to white rice, wild rice is going to be superior. However, if you compare it to brown rice, they might be a little bit more of equal in the sense that brown rice is also going to be a whole grain.
Wild rice has a kind of nutty, slightly sweet flavor and is firmer than white rice.
They can be eaten on its own, but it really does make a really nice pilaf or a soup. It works well in a stuffing. It pairs very well with some sauteed mushrooms and onions and dried fruits like cherries and cranberries. Add some nuts in there like pistachios or almonds. Even some fresh herbs like thyme and sage. There's a lot that you can really go with it.
Wild rice has to be cooked longer than white rice, between 45 and 60 minutes. I'm Julie Harker with Healthy Living on Brownfield.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Adopt U.S. Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Hundo P. Hundo P. Adjective. short for being 100% sure or certain, as in, if we get a puppy, I'll hundo P always walk it.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
There are many people out there that have survived some sort of violence. It is an experience that one does not plan for, is not prepared for, and has no knowledge of who or where to turn for help. The Homicide and Other Violent Crimes program is here for you. We serve 15 counties in north central Iowa and can offer assistance to those who have been affected by the trauma of a homicide or any other violent crime. For more information on how we can help, please call 955-5677 or visit us on the web at www.dsoc.com. All services are free and confidential.
If you're struggling with weight and frustrated with dieting each and every year, Mark Patrick Hypnosis can help. Join over 500,000 people who have attended Mark Patrick Hypnosis programs with weight loss results. Mark Patrick Hypnosis will be in Fort Dodge on Wednesday, February 6th.
After this hypnosis, I want to eat good food.
Since August, I can honestly say I have not had one potato chip.
It was life-changing for me.
And I don't think about desserts like I used to.
I had lost a total of 83 pounds.
It's easy, it's fun, very relaxing, and very successful.
And I would just say go for it.
For only $49.99, lose all the weight you want, 100% guaranteed. Wednesday, February 6th.
The Democratic nomination. Now, most Democrats, and it seems like the Democratic Party is moving further left all the time. I mean, as long as Nancy Pelosi is there, they're not going to stray too far because she's got her big donors to think about. But Senator Warren has come out and unveiled the ultra millionaire tax. What's the ultra millionaire tax? Maybe you're one of those people, but I don't think I am.
That's funny. No. So rather than like raising income taxes on the rich, which what some of the other folks in the Democrat Party are trying to do, raise the rate to 70%. For example, what this particular idea is to put a tax on net worth.
Right.
And so it would be a 2% annual tax. So every year you've got to have some way to determine the value of your net worth, and it would be 2% on that net worth between 50 million and 1 billion, and then on net worth above 1 billion, it's another 1%. So 3% overall, basically, on the amount above 1 billion. And I know probably most of your listeners are hearing this and saying, well, what does this have to do with me? This is I don't have $50 million and these guys have it. Why not take it?
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Take their money.
For good stuff, right? We could use it to fund all sorts of things these guys want. But you know what this article I sent you focuses on is the Constitution, which is nice to see that now and then talked about, and ultimately there's some serious issues here in terms of the constitutionality. Article 1, Section 8 says that all taxes should be uniform throughout the United States, and what that means essentially is that it should be the same across each of the states. And the only way to do that would be to well, you can't do it with this tax without some serious administrative difficulties. And you know, the other thing here that's important is how do you actually put a dollar figure on net worth, right? So for someone maybe who owns tons of shares of stock, that's going to fluctuate not only every day, every minute that the markets are open, and so you create a huge burden on the taxpayer, but also on the IRS to actually come up with a number that no one's going to challenge, and that you need that number to know what to multiply the rate by, right? So it's kind of a pie in the sky thing in my view that probably won't ever happen, but it kind of, I think it kind of illustrates for me at least how some folks are really out of touch with economic reality and maybe shouldn't be making decisions for the rest of us.
Politicians making pie in the sky promises? I'm shocked. Shocked. At least Howard Schultz, just the other night on 60 Minutes, who was, boy, this is the state of American wealth, isn't it? This guy is worth $2.5 billion, and he put up a bunch of coffee shops, for God's sake. Not steel, not mining, not farming, coffee.
Oh, but it's great coffee, isn't it?
It's decent coffee, but you know,
I'm not a fan, actually.
Really, I have a cup of Folgers every morning, and I'm fine. You know,
yeah, I'm not a Starbucks customer, but ultimately, obviously, the market it's passed the market test. I mean, people really love this thing. They'll wait in line for a long time to get the coffee from Starbucks. So you know, in that sense, I think he's provided great value to consumers. So not that means he has the right to be president or anything, but
no, it's just
he's created value in a way that someone like Elizabeth Warren, not to pick on her, maybe really hasn't.
Well, you know, Elizabeth Warren is going to be a punching bag for libertarians. That's just in the story. But we all look at something and come away with our own question or our own impression. When I was reading this about Senator Warren, I was reminded once again that a number of years ago, the cry was to tax business. Tax business, that's what we needed to do because they have all the money. Well, people like me were on the air then, and many others, and we pointed out repeatedly that if you that businesses aren't in the habit of paying taxes, they collect taxes from their customers and pass them on to the government. And by the way, who are their customers? Well, that would be you. So I'm wondering what would prevent these people, these very, very wealthy people.
The argument you made is exactly why we should just eliminate the corporate income tax. It is just kind of a scheme to make it seem like businesses more taxes than they are because they've got to get it from their customers, or you know, they could also get it from shareholders and by paying their employees less, I suppose. But anyhow, yeah. But how can you keep people from leaving? So that is a part of this. The Tax Foundation. TaxFoundation.org did a nice analysis of this. I can't remember where I read this, if it was in the Wall Street Journal piece or the Tax Foundation piece. But ultimately, yeah, you're right. One of the unintended consequences, if this were to actually become law, is that some people would renounce their citizenship and therefore take that money with them. And so I think that she has something in there that would be like an exit tax. If I remember right, it was like an exit tax of, I'll find it here in a minute, I think it's like 40%. Which would be her way of keeping access to that wealth. But I don't think that would pass constitutional muster either. I mean, I'm not an attorney, but it out was how the impact on the economy, right? Because if you're going to tax net worth, you're going to discourage the accumulation of net worth, and ultimately part of net worth, a big piece of it for many people is, as I mentioned earlier, their stock shares. And so if people are going to invest less in the stock market, then that means there's less financial capital available for companies to use to expand their businesses. If you're not expanding your business, well, you're probably not hiring more workers. If you're not hiring more workers, then it's harder to get a job for regular people who aren't billionaires. And so there's a whole lot of interconnectedness here, and that's where you get all these unintended consequences. Essentially, I think this would be a pretty disastrous policy.
As long as we're going down this road, do you really believe that getting rid of the corporate tax rate will encourage investment and produce more jobs?
Oh, yeah, I do. And also, I think, the issue we talked about leaving the country, at least with their headquarters, over the fact that we have the highest corporate income tax rate in the world. That factor would go away, and you would see companies moving back into the U.S. But moreover, the bigger picture is that there's a whole lot of negative consequences of this tax, and it's not a whole lot of revenue being brought in, right? It's a really small amount of the federal revenue pie that comes from the corporate income tax. So in my view, it's just not worth it, right? You're discouraging business development, and you're only bringing in a little bit of money. I mean, if we would just get serious about slowing the growth of spending, getting rid of things like the Export-Import Bank, you could pay for it in a sense, right? Without a whole lot of effort. Easy for me to say, but politically it's harder. But there's plenty of spending that can be cut. That's for sure.
Sure. This is AM 1400 KVFT, the voice of Fort Dodge. We're talking with Dr. Dean Stanzel, an economist at Southern Methodist University. Dean, one of the most annoying human beings on the planet is Michael Bloomberg. is he is a former mayor of New York and one of the most pompous men ever in public life. Well, when he was mayor of New York, he proposed a soda tax. It was good for public health, and I every time somebody does something, a political figure starts talking about the public good or public health or public benefit, I cringe because I know that's not the reason that they're doing it. But Michael Bloomberg first talked about banning large soda drinks in New York City. When there were protests, he decided to start taxing larger ones and put increasing taxes on soda companies because it's for the public good. I mean, people are overweight from drinking soda. I think he was run out of office before that happened. I don't know. But I didn't know that Philadelphia apparently has instituted such a tax, a soda tax. And in a post on my Facebook page, you can go there and see that a Philadelphia ShopRite owner. Now, I don't know what a ShopRite is, but I suppose it's like come and go.
Store.
Yeah, it's a convenience store of some kind. A Philadelphia ShopRite owner has blamed the city's soda tax for the store closing. What are the laws of unintended consequences here?
Right, and that particular store, if I recall, was located pretty close to the city limits. And that's the thing with this, is that it was a tax, of course, passed by the city council and the mayor in the city of Philadelphia. Well, Philadelphia, like most cities, is surrounded by suburbs, suburban counties and suburban municipalities. Those guys didn't raise their tax. So, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that, especially people who live close to the city border, are going to simply buy their sodas over the line in the suburbs. It's kind of astonishing that they actually thought this would bring in a lot of money, and it turns out it's bringing in substantially less than they thought it would. Now, I would be a little less cynical than you, maybe, in the sense that I do think some of these people do think it will help public health, right? That they're wrong because it doesn't work because of the ability of shoppers to shop elsewhere. But if you could put a huge tax on soda all across the country, I'm not advocating this by any stretch, but arguably you could get a reduction in consumption that, well, even that though. They looked at so went in place in the January of 2018, so about a year ago, and the analysis I looked at last fall was looking at the first half of the year. Sales in the city went down by 50%. Sales outside the city went up by 38%, and it brought in about 15% less revenue than they were expecting. And part of I think they were selling it as, we'll use this for education, right? So help public health, help the kids. Who could be against that, right?
That public health thing always gets me going. We were having a fireworks controversy here in town last summer, and one of the councilmen was concerned that veterans with PTSD would be upset about fireworks in our town. Now, I don't want to diminish PTSD. I'm sure it bothers some veterans. But as a veteran, I was offended by that condescension. Come on, man. We get home from overseas and we can't handle fireworks. Boy, we're really...
Right.
I mean, it just really gets on your nerves, I got to tell you.
So there was an academic, some economists looked at this Philadelphia soda tax, and one of the things they found that's kind of contrary to what these unintended consequences was that they were expecting, or maybe it's reasonable to expect, that what you're going to see is people will shift from sodas to other untaxed beverages like juices, water, flavored water, and that sort of thing. And so in this analysis that they have put together, there was none of that. There wasn't any substitution or no significant substitution to those beverages, but rather it was the cross shopping, as I said, going across the border to buy your sodas, and probably if you have infrequent trips outside the city, well, you go and you buy a whole bunch at Sam's or somewhere, and then you only have to go once a month, and significant reduction in calorie and sugar intake, which again, back to one of the intended consequences. You didn't even get intended consequence, and yet you create all these other problems, job losses, the ShopRite and other places either closing down or at least losing business. There was supermarkets reported a 30 to 50% sales drop from this tax. So it, I think it's another example of how little we really know, and how little we really can achieve as policymakers, or that policymakers can achieve, because we don't really pay attention to simple stuff like, well, wait a minute, if we put this big tax here, well, why won't they just drive across and buy it?
Sure. Now there's an idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly simple, but yeah, there have been others of these. I think Seattle put in one fairly recently. Seattle's home for a lot of this sort of stuff, a lot of this sort of progressive kind of tinkering, trying to shape people's behavior. And
I don't know if that's progressive. I should say that tax increases on the wealthy are always seen as some sort of progressive idea.
Sure, no, that's a good point, because a lot of this went to a lot of the burden of the tax went to the poor.
It always does, for God's
people
sake.
in the city of Philadelphia who don't have a car.
Yeah,
right? And they're not going to take a bus and go buy a big case of soda and bring it back. Right, so they had to keep buying at their local store, and that's true. And the idea I had in mind with Seattle, some of the things that like Seattle and Portland and some of these more progressive cities do with housing supply restrictions, zoning and the like, that are intended to help, almost always end up backfiring, because people can't afford to live in those places anymore. People with lower incomes, because they're restricting the supply of housing. They're not letting the builders go in and build new houses, and of course, anytime you restrict supply, you're going to see the price go up, and that's a problem everywhere. But it's been a particular problem in some of those places out on the left coast.
Yeah, the left coast. Let's talk about a different scenario for a minute. Let's say that there is a identified public good that every move, and Dallas and the entire Texas loses their minds, which they would, by the way.
Sure.
So we need a new stadium. How are we going to raise money for this stadium and get away from these soak the rich ideas?
Yeah, that's it is in part. There's similar issues involved here, and the stadium thing is just so infuriating to me, in the sense that these athletic franchise owners typically are wealthy businessmen who made their money doing something else, and this is just kind of not really even a money-making scheme for them, but in a lot of cases, just kind of a hobby. Jerry Jones wants to be the owner of a successful football team.
Yeah.
He hasn't really had a successful team, or at least not that successful lately, but nevertheless, and so these guys are the last people who need assistance from the taxpayer. But yet there's such civic pride around, kind of built around these teams, that even when you kind of put it, a lot of times these are put to a voter referendum. Even when you put it to the voters, fairly frequently the voters will say, "Yeah, let's do this." And a lot of times, Michael, it's because it's funded by something like a hotel tax or carbon tax, something that could be perceived as, well, this is going to be someone else paying for it, so what do I care?
But if we're really,
I just don't want to lose my team, right?
That's right. If we're really taxing to make people's lives better, is a football team really the answer? I don't know. I love football.
And the bottom line is, lots and lots of academics have studied this issue, and almost to a certainty, there's been no evidence that that these subsidies for stadiums do anything for the economy. Right, because if you think about, all right, so let's take the Cowboys, I guess, since that's the one you brought up. People who go to a Cowboys game tend to be people from the fairly immediate area, right? Sure. Some people travel. They've got their big Cowboys fans. They don't live here anymore, and they make their one trip a year or something. But if they weren't at the game, in other words, if the team left and then they didn't get to spend their night go see a game or a Rangers game, movies or restaurant. I mean, so it's this idea that it creates new spending, and generally it usually doesn't create new spending. It just shifts spending away from other local options.
Sure.
Hi, this is Leslie Segretti.
And I'm Tom Kreitler, and you can hear the Money Pit every Saturday afternoon from 4 to 6 on the voice of Fort Dodge, AM 1400 KVFD, Fort Dodge.
Not ruling out another shutdown. Elisa Brady, Fox News.
We don't want another government shutdown. We want a deal that actually addresses border security. It seems like it should be so simple.
White House spokeswoman Sarah Sanders moments ago saying both Republicans and Democrats agree on the need for border security, but the president also still says a wall is necessary.
At the end of the day, the biggest thing that has to happen is there has to be real and adequate funding for border security, including funding for a wall. And we'll see what the conference comes back with.
A bipartisan conference committee set to begin talks Wednesday. The temporary spending that ended the partial government shutdown runs out in less than 3 weeks. Sanders reiterating the president's threat to take executive action if there's no deal. Meantime, a new date set for the State of the Union. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi extending the formal invitation for the president to give the address 1 week from tomorrow, February 5th, the date mutually agreed to, she says, after the government shutdown ended. The U.S. putting mounting pressure on Venezuela's elected president Nicolas Maduro to transfer power to opposition leader Juan Guaido, who declared himself in charge last week.
I call on all responsible nations to recognize interim President Guaido immediately. Maduro has made clear he will not recognize Guaido or call for new elections. Now is the time to stand for democracy and prosperity in Venezuela.
National Security Advisor John Bolton announcing sanctions on Venezuela's state-owned oil company, expected to block billions in assets and export proceeds. Multiple countries have recognized Guaido as interim president. Maduro accuses the U.S. of leading a coup against him. Wall Street still worried about China's economy and the impact on global growth. The Dow dropped 209 today to 24,528. This is Fox News.
Some job recruitment sites overload your inbox with resumes. Glassdoor knows not just any will do. From experience your small business needs to grow. In fact, and Glassdoor can help you find that perfect candidate in half the resumes. Go to glassdoor.com/hire. Glassdoor. Find the right fit for your business.
This is what Flo from Progressive sounds like in one of our many hilarious commercials.
Hi, did you know that you can get a quote on your motorcycle insurance in under 3 minutes at Progressive.com? And did you know that saying hi makes even bad news sound good? Hi, you have high cholesterol. Hi, you're fine.
And this is what that same commercial sounds like on your motorcycle.
Hi, there's no more tank.
Yeah, even our commercials sound better on a bike. And with basic policy starting at $75 a year, Progressive helps keep you on yours. Quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Annual premium for basic liability policy not available in all states.
Charges against the undocumented man accused of killing 4 people in Nevada.
District attorneys in Douglas and Washoe County joined forces to file charges against Wilber Martinez Guzman together. Douglas County DA Mark Jackson mapped out the order of crimes from burglarizing Sherry and Jerry David's house, stealing their gun, killing Connie Kuntz, then Sophia Renkin, then going back to the Davids and killing them.
I'm not aware of any other case here in Nevada where we have an individual over the course of approximately 6 days commit 4 murders and commit crimes on a daily basis between Douglas County, Carson City, and Washoe County.
He's already been charged in Carson City with several counts, including burglary and pawning his alleged victim's jewelry. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
Extreme cold is coming. That warning from forecasters and elected officials in parts of the Midwest where it could feel like 60 below by Wednesday.
You want to dress for the weather, limit your exposure outside, limit any surface of your skin that's exposed to the weather, and then get back inside and stay warm.
Chris Shields is Chicago's assistant public health commissioner. The dangerous cold comes on top of the latest snowstorm. Parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin getting more than a foot, and even Atlanta could get some snow or ice.
I hope it doesn't freeze. I hope we don't have any problems, but we've seen before when we aren't proactive, you have black ice, you get wrecks on the connector.
Georgia Governor Brian Kemp hoping to avoid the kind of problems that happened during a storm 5 years ago, days before Atlanta hosts the Super Bowl this Sunday. The FBI chief just announcing criminal charges against Chinese telecommunications giant Huawei, accused of theft of trade secrets, obstruction of justice, and wire fraud in a 10-count indictment. The company is accused of misleading banks about business and violating U.S. sanctions, also with stealing trade secrets from T-Mobile. I'm Lisa Brady. This is Fox News.
Your news, your town, your station. KVFD News when it breaks.
Good afternoon. I'm Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. A child was killed when a vehicle carrying 8 people from Nebraska crashed along an icy interstate in southwestern Iowa Cass County last night. Radio Iowa's Rick Hansen reports.
All of the victims were from Grand Island, Nebraska. The Iowa State Patrol reports a 2000 driven by Jesus Cantero Perez was traveling westbound on I-80 at around 10:30 p.m. near the Marnie exit, and the vehicle went out of control due to freezing rain and icy conditions. The vehicle entered the ditch and rolled onto its passenger side. The passenger in the vehicle, 9-year-old Joshua Tavares, who was not wearing a seatbelt, died at the scene. Cantor Perez and his passengers, 35-year-old Wendy Tavares, 11-year-old Ashley Tavares, 12-year-old Kimberly Tavares, 11-year-old Yamilet Cantero, 15-year-old Jonathan Tavares, and 10-year-old Emmanuel Cantero were all injured in the crash. 4 of the injured children were not wearing their seatbelts. Both adults were buckled up. I'm Rick Hansen reporting for Radio Iowa News.
California Senator Kamala Harris is announcing the backing of Iowa Democrat Deidre DeJear. She travels to the early 2020 caucus state Monday. DeJear was Iowa's first African-American to win a primary for statewide office last year, but lost in her attempt to unseat Iowa's Republican Secretary of State. DeJear has since been courted by several Democrats taking steps toward running for president. Harris campaigned with DeJear in Iowa last fall after the two met in Washington, D.C. and California. Harris is scheduled to travel to Des Moines to participate in a CNN town hall-style event live Monday evening. Harris announced her candidacy for president January 21st. She also announced that Will Dubs, a former aide to Hillary Clinton in 2016, will direct the California Senator's 2020 Iowa campaign. The body of a missing Marshalltown teenager has been found. Radio Iowa's Ken Hughey reports.
After 5 days of searching, Marshalltown police say the body of 13-year-old Corey Brown was found Sunday morning in a secluded area on the west side of Marshalltown. Brown left his south side home on Tuesday evening, the 22nd, after what was reported as a typical parent-teen dispute. The Brown family discovered Corey's disappearance Wednesday morning and found security camera video from their house of Corey leaving and heading south. That appears to be the last time he was seen alive. The Brown family has requested that their privacy be honored while thanking all the public safety personnel and volunteers who, quote, worked diligently, unquote, in the search for Corey. Marshalltown Police Chief Mike Tupper says the investigation is continuing into the 13-year-old's disappearance and death, but adds that while there is no indication of any criminal activity, all scenarios are being investigated. For Radio Iowa, Ken Hughey, Marshalltown.
This has been Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. Have a great day.
Here's the AM 1400 KVFD weatherology forecast. A wind chill advisory begins at 6 p.m. this evening and continues until noon tomorrow. A wind chill warning begins at noon tomorrow and continues until noon Thursday. A mix of clouds and sun this afternoon with a chance of flurries. High of 13. Winds out of the northwest 10 to 20 miles per hour. 5 below tonight, mainly clear. From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Currently, it's 7 above.
Have the talk of the lifetime with the ones you love and make the difference of a lifetime.
Grandma, this card asks, what's your favorite family tradition?
Christmas would be my favorite. You know how we use the special tablecloth and all the fancy dishes?
And those cookies you always make.
Should we whip up a batch and bake some together now?
Sharing stories and memories with those who matter most isn't just important today. It will be especially significant when it's time to honor a life lived. Contact Gunderson Funeral Home to learn more about having the talk of a lifetime.
Have you ever wanted to speak another language? Whether you want to speak Spanish, French, or German, Babbel 10 to 15-minute lessons can get you speaking confidently in your new language within weeks.
I just started learning Spanish with Babbel, and it's really helping me with my pronunciation.
¿Cómo te llamas?
¿Cómo te llamas?
¿De dónde eres?
¿De dónde eres? Haha, I got it! I'm amazed how confidently I speak Spanish now. I wish I had tried Babbel sooner.
Babbel's award-winning technology gets you speaking right away. And best of all, you'll remember what you've learned. No wonder Babbel is the #1 selling language learning app in Europe. Try it for yourself and see why Babbel is the quick way to get conversational in a new language, like Spanish, German, Portuguese, and more. You can try Babbel for free. Go to Babbel.com or download the app and try it for free. That's Babbel, Babbel.com, or download the app to try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Take the worry out of winter with a winter weather advisor
Brought to you by Fort Dodge, offering dental, behavioral health, and general medical assistance for men, women, and children. They're committed to your well-being. Community Health Center. Get to know them. And Creative Cakes, making life sweet with espresso, lunch, gourmet cupcakes, and other sweet treats. Creative Cakes in the Crossroads Mall, Fort Dodge. For the Winter Weather Advisor on the Voice of Fort Dodge, AM 1400 KVFD.
Michael Devine at AM 1400.
In the name of justice and the American way of life.
With 60 rounds of freedom.
You're saying a lot of words really fast that mean nothing.
Michael Devine at AM 1400 KVFD.
Listen to this.
Making radio great again.
That's right. That's what we're trying to do. Save radio from itself. Save radio from the bottomless pit of boredom that it seems determined to suck itself into. Radio can be boring, ladies and gentlemen. Boring is bad. Yeah, that's why I have Jerry Schnurr on the program, because he's just never boring. See, there we go.
Well, let's go. Let's go.
Jerry Schnurr is a local attorney and my longest contributor, and I thank him for that.
You're welcome.
And Jerry and I often talk about the judiciary and the effect the judiciary has on our lives. And of course, Jerry thinks it's a noble institution, and I think it's a star chamber. So there we go. But the reason that me and others believe that the Supreme Court exceeds the boundaries of their authority on occasion is they invoke the 14th Amendment. So let's talk about a little bit about the 14th Amendment today, Jerry. I don't know if you got my email, but I sent a few examples of the 14th Amendment in action through history. One of them being, of course, Plessy versus Ferguson,
right,
which was the worst Supreme Court decision. There have been others that, like Brown versus Board of Education, for example, that invoke the 14th Amendment. Brown versus Board of Education told us that educational opportunities must be equal, and that separate facilities, educational institutions that divided white and black students were inherently unconstitutional. I hope that we all agree on that. So again, let's talk a little bit about the 14th Amendment. How do you see the 14th Amendment? Do you see it as expansive as some Supreme Court justices have?
Well, I see it as what it does is it guarantees the rights of individuals to be treated equally by the states, because in our history we had the Fifth Amendment, which guarantees due process for individuals as a result of the action of federal government, equal protection and due process. But that's as a result of action by the federal government. And so, as we've talked about before, after the Civil War, there was the 13th Amendment and 14th Amendment because the states were not bound by the Fifth Amendment. So the states could treat people unequally and treat individuals and institutions and businesses unequally. And so the 14th Amendment is meant to kind of hold the states in line and to say, look, we treat them equally, and people are entitled to due process under federal law and under as a result of federal action. States can not be more restrictive than federal law in guaranteeing equal protection and due process, because that was not the case before the 14th Amendment.
A little
I think that's where we start from.
Well, actually, let's start with the history of the 14th Amendment. During the Reconstruction time, right after the Civil War, the 14th Amendment came to play to address citizenship rights and equal protection of laws for slaves, former slaves. Now, the amendment was bitterly contested by the Confederate States, but they had to agree to it, or they wouldn't have had their citizenship rights restored, which they wanted. They wanted to be able to represent. They wanted to represent their states in Congress. And the victorious Union said, well, yeah, we're going to let you back in, even though you wanted to leave the Union. But we're going to have this 14th Amendment as well to allow slaves full citizenship. The terrible thing that happened was the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. The forward much more than his Andrew Johnson, who was from Tennessee and kind of had some Confederate sympathies. So
Yeah, being from Tennessee, you would have.
yeah, and yeah, he did. He would have, and that resulted in a very long, unpleasant period we call the Jim Crow period, really. But anyway, that's the real history of the 14th Amendment, and many in the Federalist Society, and I'm not a member of the Federalist Society, but I read a lot of their material. The Federalist Society essentially are originalists, and they argue that the 14th Amendment should not be used to pass some cases like Griswold versus Connecticut, the right to privacy. Now, the right to privacy was not about abortion in 1965. Griswold versus Connecticut decided that that married people can do as they wish, and if they wanted to have children, and if they wanted to engage in family planning, they could.
Right.
Now, William Douglas, who was a very eccentric Supreme Court justice, he has my vote for the most eccentric Supreme Court justice. He told us then that we should allow this right of privacy because of penumbras emanating from the Constitution, which drives the Federalist Society guys completely insane. But that's a little bit of what happened. The 14th Amendment started to be seen by liberal justices, I think, or by some in the judicial establishment. By that I mean law schools and people around law schools, as a way to move the ball forward as far as expanding civil rights. Now, the gay marriage decision was another example of the 14th Amendment granting equal access to everyone in equality under the law. And again, this all started with an amendment that was guaranteeing former slaves citizenship rights. So, yeah, the Federalists have long argued that the court, and I've long argued with Jerry, for that matter,
Right.
that the 14th Amendment, as currently used, is a long distance from the intent of those who wrote the 14th Amendment. And if we want these additional rights, we ought to amend the Constitution or legislate it, one of the two. But on this show, that's only worth 50% of the argument. Because Jerry just isn't going to go along with that.
No, not buying that.
Okay, so
No.
why is that? Why aren't you?
know who gets to decide which rights are citizens entitled to and which aren't, because they're not spelled out in the Constitution. So I think the drafters of the Constitution didn't want us to list, well, you have this right, this right, this right, this right. Oh, no, not this one. Yep, you have this one. Yep, not this one. So if we go that way and we have to say, okay, we have to amend the Constitution for each right and specifically list each of the rights we're talking about, that's, you know, you don't have the right to an abortion. Well, we don't have the right to birth control. You don't have, or, you know, you do have the right or you don't have the right. You do have the right to equal protection. You do have the right to the same education in the poor parts of the country as the rich kids in the rich parts of the country. You do have, you know, so if we get into that, how do we do that? And it becomes manageable, basically. I think the drafters had in mind that, so
that's the question.
And so
is the judiciary too powerful now?
Well, I don't think it is. And you can, I really don't think it is. I think for the most part, they make decisions what they believe the law to be based upon the facts and the arguments presented and the cases as they're presented. They don't go out and look for issues, to social issues or societal issues to try and fix those the way legislatures are supposed to, or the executive is supposed to, in our system. So they can only act based upon cases that are brought to them. They can't, you know, Chief Justice Roberts can't go out and say, you know what, I'm going to attack poverty, so I'm going to do A, B, and C. He can't. He has to wait for somebody to bring a case, and it's not that they're necessarily looking for anything. They don't act with a political agenda I don't believe they do. They don't act with a political agenda. They act with what they think the law is and the way they view the Constitution. And you're right that some people have different views of the Constitution. Some think, like Justice Thomas and Scalia did, and some of the more, what we would call more conservative justices, believe more in what they call original text, original language. Some don't. Some believe that the Constitution was not meant to be frozen in 1789, but meant to carry us through the history and into the future. And so they take a different view of it.
What is substantive due process? I can never say that right.
Yeah.
Substantive due process.
Well, you're not the only one. There's a lot of people. I do too. But there's procedural due process. Procedural due process talks about, if the court or the government is going to act to take action against you, you need to at least have notice that the government is going to act or the court is going to act. And then you have to have an opportunity to respond and present your side of the case. Substantive due process is whether the law actually treats people fairly in the substance of their rights. And so it's a hard thing to grasp. I still have a hard time and have to rethink it. And it's a hard thing to grasp for a lot of folks and a lot of lawyers. But it goes to the essence of your rights, not just you get notice and an opportunity to appear, but that the law is fair and that the law is going to treat you fairly and protect your rights as well as the rights of others.
Well, that sounds good to me.
Yeah. So it's a good idea, and so. But it's something that there's debate over, and that's why we have cases in the Supreme Court, and it's hard to settle, and it's hard for us to say this is the way it's going to be for everybody, and that's legislation. Okay, so we see a problem and we say, you know what, the sun sets at 5 o'clock, but they changed the law, and the law is going to be because we think it helps with transportation or energy use or getting people to work or so forth, we're going to change to daylight savings and shift the way we keep time during the day. That's a political decision that affects everybody. But when you get into legislation that affects people and it affects one person or a small group of people differently than others, without some good reason tied to the governmental purpose, the health, safety, morals of the community, then the court would say, well, you've exceeded your authority, and this does not protect, it's not due process, or it's not equal protection for that group or that person individually.
This is AM 1400 KVFT, the voice for Dodge. One of the stranger applications of the 14th Amendment was the Bakke decision. Now, people my age and Jerry's age remember the Bakke decision quite well. Mr. Alan Bakke was a white man, lived in California, and he applied to the University of California Medical School at Davis. They have a university system there in California, of course. He applied 2 separate occasions, and he was denied. He was denied because of the flaky liberal administration of the University of California at Davis had set aside 16 spots for minority candidates in what they said was an attempt to address unfair minority exclusion in the past. They thought they would remedy that by excluding Bakke. Now, Bakke took this to the Supreme Court to make a long story short. And the Supreme Court ruled that the university must accept Bakke. Justice Lewis F. Powell, who wrote the Powell Memorandum, and we'll talk about the Powell Memorandum sometime, Justice Lewis F. Powell cast a deciding vote ordering the medical school to admit Bakke. However, in his opinion, Justice Powell said that the rigid use of racial quotas violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Now, there has been a fight over that ever since. Universities are still trying to come up with a number of different ways to admit minority students. And I think they've been losing at the court level for the most part. But the administrators are determined to keep their quota admissions. What can we say about the Bakke decision and the use of the 14th Amendment?
Yeah, the Bakke decision involved, and I don't know if that involved the use of the affirmative action civil rights legislation from the 60s, but the University of California and other colleges and institutions had implemented quotas as an attempt to try and address the underlying societal policy problems of racial inequality. And so Mr. Bakke, as you said, took this case to the Supreme Court when he didn't gain admission. And he claimed that he was not admitted because he was white. We don't need to go into all the facts, but the court said, what the court came down and says, you can't use racial quotas. You can use race as a factor, but you cannot use rigid racial quotas to say we have to have X percent of particular minority, X percent of particular race, and that's what we're going to have, and that's how we're going to make up our student body. So they said you can't do that.
We're still struggling with this, though.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody's always, or some institution is being attacked for being too white, or there's not enough diversity or affirmative action. Those are all code words for quotas.
Well, most of the challenges today come from the other side. It seems in the court. Most of the challenges today are when universities or colleges use race as a factor. The suits are being brought to try and eliminate even that. And so most of the challenges in the courts are not so much that you're not diverse enough. It's more that I didn't get in. You shouldn't use race as a factor. And usually it's a white person that's bringing the claims. And they're trying to whittle that down further. That's what I've seen. Now, I could be wrong because I don't follow it that closely, but that in the news anyways, that's what you see.
So do you think Tom Brady of the New England Patriots looks a lot like the guy, the child actor who used to be on Harry Potter?
You know what? Yeah, he kind of does.
He really does, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I don't know how he does it. He's as old as he is. I wouldn't want to have been out there at 42 or whatever he is.
He says he has said today, I believe, that the Super Bowl absolutely will not be his last game. And I like a lot of people, I Googled Tom Brady's diet the other day. Jesus, I wouldn't eat that stuff. I swear to God.
Really? What is it?
No, it's very plant-based.
Yeah.
And I'm not a believer in plant-based diets.
Yeah.
I believe you take in too many calories. And of course, he has an exercise regimen as well.
Yeah.
And he stays away from red meat and those things. And very plant-based diet and the usual amount of fruits and juices and all these sorts of things. But it's kept him going, I'll tell you that.
Well, yeah, it has. And one of the things, there's a couple things I think that helps him other than his diet and his routine is he's got a pretty good offensive line.
Oh, yeah.
And he does not hold on to the ball very long.
No.
And he's got a bunch of receivers and folks around him that are so good and he's so in tune with, and he is good. There's no doubt about it. He's good. But he doesn't hold the ball more than 2 seconds. If you count and watch during the Super Bowl, from the time the ball is snapped until he gets rid of it, it's 2 seconds. It doesn't go over 3 seconds ever, but it's about 2 seconds. He drops back and he throws the ball, and that's no time for people to get to him.
Well, and
he can't move otherwise really very much.
And every defense in the National Football League knows if they want to beat the Patriots, they got to get pressure on Brady.
That's right.
But that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult. And the other is that he has a great offensive line.
Yeah, and he's still very accurate and has a good arm.
He's frighteningly accurate, actually.
Yeah, yeah. So,
he has a great arm, that's for sure.
Yeah, he sure does.
You want to give a prediction? Who, the Patriots or the Rams?
I'm going to have to go with the Patriots. I'd like to see the Rams win. My heart's with the Rams, but I got to go with the Patriots. I think it'll be a pretty close game, though. I think it'll be 7 points or less. It's going to be within a touchdown.
Well, I think it's the Patriots and 2.5.
Okay.
So it's the betting. The odds is a lot tighter than I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Jerry Schnur's been our guest. Hey, thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, Mike. Have a great day.
You too. This is AM 1400 KVFD.
Michael Devine at AM 1400 KVFD.
Listen to this.
Making radio great again.
It's 4:32.
I'm a fourth-generation Iowa farmer. Farming's not a job, it's an opportunity to help feed and fuel the world. Access to reliable credit is key in any successful business. In farming with its ups and downs, we rely on our local bank to keep our operation successful. Our farming operation wouldn't be as successful as it is without the financial support of our local Iowa bank. I appreciate my Iowa bank.
More Iowans choose to bank with an Iowa bank. Get to know a real Iowa banker and discover the genuine difference of Iowa banks.
Your news, your town, your station. KVFD News when it breaks.
Good afternoon. I'm Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. A child was killed when a vehicle carrying 8 people from Nebraska crashed along an icy interstate in southwestern Iowa, Cass County last night. Radio Iowa's Rick Hansen reports.
All of the victims were from Grand Island, Nebraska. The Iowa State Patrol reports a 2004 GMC driven by 40-year-old Jesus Cantero Perez was traveling westbound on I-80 at around 10:30 p.m. near the Marnie exit, and the vehicle went out of control due to freezing rain and icy conditions. The vehicle entered the ditch and rolled onto its passenger side. The passenger in the vehicle, 9-year-old Joshua Tavares, who was not wearing a seatbelt, died at the scene. Cantor Perez and his passengers, 35-year-old Wendy Tavares, 11-year-old Ashley Tavares, 12-year-old Kimberly Tavares, 11-year-old Yamilet Cantero, 15-year-old Jonathan Tavares, and 10-year-old Emmanuel Cantero were all injured in the crash. 4 of the injured children were not wearing their seatbelts. Both adults were buckled up. I'm Rick Hansen reporting for Radio Iowa News.
California Senator Kamala Harris is announcing the backing of Iowa Democrat Deidre DeJear. She travels to the early 2020 caucus state Monday. DeJear was Iowa's first African-American to win a primary for statewide office last year, but lost in her attempt to unseat Iowa's Republican Secretary of State. DeJear has since been courted by several Democrats taking steps toward running for president. Harris campaigned with DeJear in Iowa last fall after the two met in Washington, D.C. and California. Harris is scheduled to travel to Des Moines to participate in a CNN town hall-style event live Monday evening. Harris announced her candidacy for president January 21st. She also announced that Will Dubs, a former aide to Hillary Clinton in 2016, will direct the California Senator's 2020 Iowa campaign. The body of a missing Marshalltown teenager has been found. Radio Iowa's Ken Hughey reports.
After 5 days of searching, Marshalltown police say the body of 13-year-old Corey Brown was found Sunday morning in a secluded area on the west side of Marshalltown. Brown left his south side home on Tuesday evening, the 22nd, after what was reported as a typical parent-teen dispute. The Brown family discovered Corey's disappearance Wednesday morning and found security camera video from their house of Corey leaving and heading south. That appears to be the last time he was seen alive. The Brown family has requested that their privacy be honored while thanking all the public safety personnel and volunteers who, quote, worked diligently, unquote, in the search for Corey. Marshalltown Police Chief Mike Tupper says the investigation is continuing into the 13-year-old's disappearance and death, but adds that while there is no indication of any criminal activity, all scenarios are being investigated. For Radio Iowa, Ken Hughey, Marshalltown.
This has been Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. Have a great day.
From the Fox Business Network, Wall Street stumbling to start the week. The Dow falling 208 points on Monday with new worries about slowing global growth, putting pressure on stocks. Meantime, bosses are preparing for a Super Bowl hangover from their workers. A new report from the employment firm Challenger Gray and Christmas saying Super Bowl-related absences could cost companies around $2.5 billion in lost productivity. Last year, nearly 14 million people called out sick the Monday after the game. The American Gaming Association saying an estimated $6 billion set to be wagered on the Super Bowl, with nearly 10% of American adults putting some kind of action on the game. And even though the Pittsburgh Steelers are not playing in the Super Bowl, the team still has super fans. According to a new survey from Wallet Hub, Pittsburgh, the best city in America for football fans. That's taking into account things like average ticket prices, stadium accessibility, and overall team performance. With the Fox Business Report, I'm Connell McShane.
if you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba. Please be done. Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Here's the AM 1400 KVFD weatherology forecast. A wind chill advisory begins at 6 p.m. this evening and continues until noon tomorrow. A wind chill warning begins at noon tomorrow and continues until noon Thursday. A mix of clouds and sun this afternoon with a chance of flurries. High of 13. Winds out of the northwest 10 to 20 miles per hour. 5 below tonight, mainly clear. From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Currently, it's 5 above.
What makes the Iowa Power Farming Show a great farm show? It's 5 ag startups competing live for a $20,000 prize. It's 78 new exhibitors and more. It's being the first to see Yamaha's ZarMax unmanned copter sprayer. It's 740 ag companies with the latest innovations, including 33 micronutrient companies. Check it out January 29th through the 31st at the Iowa Event Center in Des Moines. Doors open at 9 each day with free parking and shuttle at Principal Park. Sponsored in part by Farm Credit Services of America and Ag Direct. The Iowa Power Farming Show. Now that's a great farm show.
Connect to this radio station from all across the country. Take us to the gym, shopping. How about a road trip? Listen to us now on the free iHeartRadio app. You'll never miss a moment with your favorite radio station. Download the free iHeartRadio app and search for the station so we can go wherever you want us to.
Hi, I'm Tommy. I'm a farmer, a wife, a mom, a leader in my community, and I live with HIV. My life is just like yours. I get up every day hoping for the best day possible out in field. I feed my soul with hard work and am dedicated to making the most out of every day. I wasn't always so optimistic, but once I found out that I'm just one of over 3,000 Iowans living with HIV, I knew I wasn't alone. I reached out to the Iowa Department of Public Health and found out I qualified for medication and medical care, financial help, transportation, housing, and counseling through Ryan White funding. That was a huge relief to me and my family. I've taken control of my diagnosis and take care of myself so I can live my best life. I'm living with HIV, not dying from it. Why wait? Reach out for testing and care services at stopHIViowa.org.
Michael Devine at AM 1400.
In the name of justice and the American way of life.
With 60 rounds of freedom.
This is AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. I'm Michael Devine. We are going to tell the truth, make it matter. We're never going to be boring. Of course, today, once again, we are talking with Dr. Dean Stanzel, an economist with Southern Methodist University. Hi, Dean. How are you?
I'm doing great, Michael. How are you?
Dean, you're with the O'Neill Center. Please explain the O'Neill Center at SMU.
Sure thing. The O'Neill Center for Global Markets and Freedom is in the Cox Business School at SMU in Dallas, and it was set up by William O'Neill, who's one of our alums, and he also happens to be the founder of Investors Business Daily newspaper at investors.com. We focus on studying the impact of competitive market forces on freedom and prosperity in the global economy, and our website is o'neillcenter.org. That's ONEIL.
Elizabeth Warren has come to the attention of Dr. Stanzel. Now, Dr. Warren has gotten beat up in the past. As a matter of fact, President Trump still calls her Pocahontas. She's been a little loose with the truth here a time or two. But she is an early, she has let us know, she's one of the early people who've announced that she intends to seek the Democratic nomination. Now, most Democrats, and it seems like the Democratic Party is moving further left all the time. I mean, as long as Nancy Pelosi is there, they're not going to stray too far because she's got her big donors to think about. But Senator Warren has come out and unveiled the ultra-millionaire tax. What's the ultra-millionaire tax? Maybe you're one of those people, but I don't think I am.
That's funny. No. So rather than like raising income taxes on the rich, which what some of the other folks in the Democratic Party are trying to do, raise the rate to 70%, for example. What this particular idea is to put a tax on net worth.
Right.
And so it would be a 2% annual tax. So every year you've got to have some way to determine the value of your net worth, and it would be 2% on that net worth between $50 50 million and 1 billion, and then on net worth above 1 billion, it's another 1%. So 3% overall, basically, on the amount above 1 billion. And I know probably most of your listeners are hearing this and saying, well, what does this have to do with me? This is I don't have $50 million, and these guys have it. Why not take it?
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Take their money
for good stuff, right? We could use it to fund all sorts of things these guys want. But you know what? This article I sent you focuses on is the Constitution, which is nice to see that now and then talked about, and ultimately there's some serious issues here in terms of the constitutionality. Article 1, Section 8 says that all taxes should be uniform throughout the United States, and what that means essentially is that it should be the same across each of the states. And the only way to do that would be to well, you can't do it with this tax without some serious administrative difficulties. And you know, the other thing here that's important is how do you actually put a dollar figure on net worth, right? So for someone maybe who owns tons of shares of stock, that's going to fluctuate not only every day, every minute that the markets are open, and so you create a huge burden on the taxpayer, but also on the IRS to actually come up with a number that no one's going to challenge, and that you need that number to know what to multiply the rate by, right? So it's kind of a pie in the sky thing in my view that probably won't ever happen, but it kind of, I think it kind of illustrates for me at least how some folks are really out of touch with economic reality and maybe shouldn't be making decisions for the rest of us.
Politicians making pie in the sky promises? I'm shocked. Shocked. At least Howard Schultz, just the other night on 60 Minutes, who was, boy, this is the state of American wealth, isn't it? This guy is worth $2.5 billion, and he put up a bunch of coffee shops, for God's sake. Not steel, not mining, not farming, coffee.
Oh, but it's great coffee, isn't it?
It's decent coffee, but I'm
not a fan, actually.
Really, I have a cup of Folgers every morning, and I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm not a Starbucks customer, but ultimately, obviously, the market it's passed the market test. I mean, people really love this thing. They'll wait in line for a long time to get the coffee from Starbucks. So in that sense, I think he's provided great value to consumers. So not that means he has the right to be president or anything, but
no, it's just
he's created value in a way that someone like Elizabeth Warren, not to pick on her, maybe really hasn't.
Well, Elizabeth Warren's going to be a punching bag for libertarians. That's just in the story. But we all look at something and come away with our own question or our own impression. When I was reading this about Senator Warren, I was reminded once again that a number of years ago, the cry was to tax business. Tax business, that's what we needed to do because they have all the money. Well, people like me were on the air then, and many others, and we pointed out repeatedly that that businesses aren't in the habit of paying taxes. They collect taxes from their customers and pass them on to the government. And by the way, who are their customers? Well, that would be you. So I'm wondering what would prevent these people, these very, very wealthy people, from just moving their wealth.
Well, exactly, and actually, the argument you made is exactly why we should just eliminate the corporate income tax. It is just kind of a scheme to make it seem like businesses is paying more taxes than they are because they